Hello, 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 hello. Wide vibe. When you did the wide vibe, the hat was like on the paw of the bunny. Wide sniffer. How are you guys this fine Wednesday afternoon? It is both afternoon and a Wednesday today. It's the old no-no. I'm always a no-no. This is the me no-no. Jiggling? Jiggling? Old no. It's so funny because the eyebrows on this model are so sensitive compared to the eyebrows on my other model. So when I just kind of furrow my brows a little bit, I'm like, I'm so mad. Angry. I love this model. We'll still be using it. I want to use it all the time for Warrior Cat Wednesday, of course, and then for other games as we play some games. Why are you tired, Gibbons? Why are you tired? This morning I made some Pillsbury crescents. They're not croissants, but they're crescents because they're technically just like a bun in the shape of a croissant. A croissant! Fake croissant. Full day of school. Man, school. Why can't we all just have money and do what we want? Hi! Well, what should I call you? Croissant, not crescent. No, that's what it's called. It's a Pillsbury crescent. Because it's a knockoff croissant. Number? Okay, number. But you're technically... Wait, no. Are you one number or are you multiple numbers strung together? Is that one solid number or is it supposed to be like 3, 4 is one number and 8, 8 is another number? A detective game? What's the code for? Licka! X-Chiller. Chill. Chill gamer. What? I want to know what the code is. What's the code hack into? I gotta know the details. ¿Por qué no los dos? Los dos. Why no croissant? I'm not weird. Or are we all weird? Oh, I got a text message. It's from my sister. She sent me a picture of our dog. Oh, I love our dog. It's so far away from me. Oh, they came and visit. My mom brought our dog over to the condo to visit, and she was very cute. She didn't care about me. She wanted to look at all the furniture, and then my cat was really happy to see her. She was a little spooked. She was a little spooked at first, but then she recognized the little clicky clackies of her nail on the wooden floor. And she kind of like perked up. And then there was a point where she was hiding behind my bed and like looking up from the wall. And then our puppy was looking down and they had like eye contact. And her eyes got really big, like not shrunk, but like big, like diluted. And they stared at each other. And then my dog got tired and left to go eat treats. The code is deciphered as Greek letters. Oh, Greek letters. It's so hard to beat that dang game. Oh. I'm Canadian and half Japanese. I'm Canadian too. Gibbons is just being a goofball. In the Discord, I think they're visiting Canada right now, and so they were saying everything's weird in Canada. And then I was like, I'm in Canada, and then Gibbons said, you're weird then. And I was like, yeah. Weird affectionate, exactly. Weird affectionate. Okay, I just need to eat my crescent. And then we'll begin the Warrior Cat reading. Code, today is Warrior Cat Wednesday. I saw you come in yesterday during the collab stream on Warrior Cat Wednesdays. I just read some Warrior Cats. And it's this book. Today we're starting a new book, so it's actually a pretty good time to be here. You don't really need too much context because it'll summarize what is going on. Weird, mysterious. It is about cats, and they have their own kind of like cat language sometimes. So if you're like, what the heck is moon high? That means it's midnight. Or if they're like, oh yes, fall leaf is approaching. I mean, leaf fall is approaching. That's fall. It was a book that I read in my childhood, and so because I'm like kind of like a nostalgic streamer, this is part of the nostalgia. Thank you for the lurk, Silver. Silver's so kind to me. They're neat stories, even though I'm very lost most of the time. They're very dramatic. As you can see, there's a death toll. These are all the cats that have died up until this point in the second series. We're starting book 4. So in 3 books, 14 plus cats have died. The plus means cats that are said to have died but didn't get a name. Kind of like, oh, a bunch of elders died, but we don't know those elders and we don't know how many elders died, so we just put the plus. Oh my god, oh no, I know! It's for kids. It's like middle school, but I guess you could read it in elementary school too. You know how like kids read like Aragon in like elementary school if they were like really smart? It's kind of like that. It's violent. It's dramatic. It's like soap operas for kids. And it's about cats, so that's even cooler. Okay, I technically did not finish my crescent, but as an Aragon fan, we aren't that smart, really? I had this kid I was in grade 5 and we had a split class. So we had grade 5 and grade 4s. And this kid in grade 4 was reading an Aragon book. And it was like the biggest, thickest book with small letters I'd ever seen. And then the teacher was like, look how smart he is. He's reading this big book with small letters. You guys should start reading big books too. That was the teacher talking. And then I was like, oh. Deja vu. Yeah, we did talk about this before. It's for... Kids are middle schoolers, right? Kids are... Technically, you're like a preteen. So that's like a middle schooler. We know the plot is basically just Star Wars, but we don't care. Really? It's about Star Wars? But where does the dragon come in? What's the dragon in Star Wars? I thought it was like there's a kid and then a dragon. The plot beats... I guess we're all kids at heart. Or we want to be. Or we should be. The plot beats off the first book basically 1-to-1. Oh. I don't know very much about Star Wars. I know that I know that it's like son he lives in a desert. His dad's dead. He finds out something about his dad. He wants revenge. He leaves the desert. He gets trained. His dad was alive? Oh. Wait, then why was he mad? Oh, wait, did he think that his dad was dead, but then his dad was Darth Vader? I don't think that's much of a spoiler because the Luke, I am your father thing is like kind of known, right? Kid lives in mountains, parents are dead, finds old mentor and special powers. Need I go on? But did Star Wars make that up? Or is that just a very basic writing device? You know? Like there are very specific sorts of writing plot lines. And that could be one of them. Yeah, very classic. Hero tale shtick. Obi-Wan. He was mad because his aunt and uncle died to stormtroopers. Oh, he got mad because his only family alive died. Oh, I see. Basic hero journey, except it's not the warrior cat hero story, which is my segue into Starlight, warrior cats. As usual, I will not summarize the last book because Warrior Cats is pretty good at summarizing. Dead family can't die a second time unless they were never dead. Unless. And yes, it does a pretty good job at summarizing what happened up until this point. So I'll leave it to the book to tell us what is going on. Also, as usual, I may be a little bit rusty reading because during the week I don't read because I am silly goose. And so it may take me a while to get into the groove, or I'll never get into the groove, or I'll be in the groove the entire time. It really depends. Yes. All right. Let's begin. Prologue. Did I say we'll start with the epilogue? I meant the prologue. Moonlight washed over the hillside, casting heavy shadows around a thick wall of thorn bushes. The bushes surrounded a hollow with rocky sides that sloped down steeply to a pool in the shape of a full moon. Halfway up the side of the hollow, a trickle of water bubbled up between two moss-covered stones, glimmering like liquid starshine as it fell into the pool below. The branches rustled and parted as cats emerged at the top of the hollow and began to pick their way down to the water's edge. Their pelts shone with a soft, pale light, and their paw steps left the frosty glitter on the moss behind them. A tortoiseshell she-cat was the first to reach the pool. She looked around with glowing eyes. "Yes," she purred, "this is the place." "You're right, Spotted Leaf. When we chose the 4 cats to lead the clans out of the forest, we chose well." The reply came from a blue-gray warrior who was approaching from the other side of the hollow. She leaped down from a jutting rock to face the tortoiseshell across the moonlit water. "But the clans still have a hard task ahead of them." Spotted Leaf dipped her head in agreement. "Yes, Blue Star. Their courage and faith will be tried to their limits. But they have come this far. They will not give up." More starry warriors joined them, clustering around the water until the hollow was lined with their sleek, shining shapes. "Our journey was hard, too," one cat meowed. "We felt the pain of leaving the paths we had walked for so long," added another. "Now we must learn to walk in new skies." Spotted Leaf's voice was full of confidence. She sat on a rock near the tumbling stream and wrapped her tail around her paws. "We must guide our clans to this new meeting place, where we can speak to the leaders and medicine cats. This will truly be a home for all 5 clans." A murmur of agreement rose, and a gleam of hope shone in the eyes of the cats around her.
They will catch fish from the lake.
And prey is running in the hills and beside the water, another put in. All the clans will find food, even in Leaf Bear. The blue-gray warrior still seemed uneasy. There's more to life than fresh kill, she mewed. A breaking-colored Tom thrust his way to the front of the crowd.
They're not kits, he pointed out impatiently. They know how to avoid two legs and dogs, foxes and badgers too.
Not all trouble comes from two legs, Bluestar snapped. She swiveled her head to glare into the Tom's eyes.
And not from foxes or badgers either, Oakhart. You know that as well as I do. The clans bring trouble within themselves.
The warriors glanced uneasily at one another, but Oakhart dipped his head.
Of course, and they always will. That is part of what it means to be a warrior.
Trouble from within greatest danger brings, a new voice spoke, deep and gravelly. Bluestar whipped around, her neck fur bristling, and stared at the newcomer standing at the top of the hollow. It was too dark and solid to be a cat. Instead, it seemed as if a clot of darkness had entered the circle of thorn bushes, in which the watching cats could just make out broad, muscular limbs and the gleam of small, bright eyes. After a few heartbeats, Bluestar relaxed.
Welcome, friend, she meowed. StarClan owes you thanks. You have done well. Being by me is little done, the newcomer replied. These cats their destiny have faced with courage.
The clans have traveled far and suffered a great deal of sadness that we were powerless to ease, Spotted Leaf agreed. They kept going even when we lost sight of and hearing of them among the mountains, when they walked the paths of a different tribe. Now they must learn to be four cat clans again. She looked solemn. There will be much pain, especially for those who traveled together to the sun-drowned place. They won't find it easy to forget their friendship.
They must mark out their new territories as soon as they can.
Oakhart's voice rumbled in his throat.
There'll be trouble there.
Every loyal warrior will want the best for their clan, meowed Bluestar.
So long as it's their clan that they fight for, returned Oakhart, and not themselves.
This is where the danger lies, murmured an anxious voice. A tomcat with glossy black coat was gazing down into the silvery water as if he could see the danger rising to the surface like a giant fish. I see one cat, hungry for power, that is not deserved.
Not deserved?
A lean Tom with the crooked jaws sprang to his paws on the other side of the pool, the fur on his shoulders bristling in fury.
Nightstar, how dare you say not deserved?
The black Tom's pelt rippled in the moonlight as he looked up. Sorry, I gave him a different kind of voice than he was supposed to have.
Very well, Crooked Star, not deserved yet, he meowed. This cat needs to learn the virtue of patience. Power is not a piece of prey to be grabbed before it escapes.
The cat with the crooked jaw sat down again, though the anger stayed in his eyes.
Would you have all your warriors as timid as mice? He muttered.
Nightstar's eyes narrowed and his tail tip twitched, but before he could spit out a reply, another cat padded forward. A thick-furred gray she-cat with a broad face and a fierce gleam in her eyes. She stood beside Spotted Leaf at the mossy edge of the pool and gazed down into the water. After a few moments, ripples began to spread in circles from the middle of the pool and wash against the bank. The gray she-cat lifted her head.
I have seen...
Oh, wait, what voice did I give Yellowfang?
I have seen what will come, she growled. There are dark times ahead.
A stir of anxiety passed through the cats like wind rippling through the reeds, but no cat dared to question her out loud.
Well,
Bluestar demanded when the silence had stretched out for several heartbeats. Tell us what you mean, Yellowfang. The gray she-cat hesitated.
I am not certain what I have seen, she rasped at last, and you won't like what I have to tell you.
She closed her eyes, and when she spoke her voice was deeper and quieter than before, so that every cat had to strain to listen.
Before there is peace, blood will spill blood, and the lake will run red.
Bluestar stiffened, and she bent her head to look into the water.
A red stain was spreading across the surface, rippling outward until the water flamed scarlet. It seemed to reflect the fire of sunset, yet above the hollow the moon still floated in thin drifts of cloud. A gasp of horror rose from the cats. Spotted Leaf padded forward, trembling, and stared desperately into the water as if she were searching for something that would challenge Yellowfang's ominous words. "Are you trying to find out what will happen to Firestar?" Bluestar asked her gently. "Don't search too hard, Spotted Leaf. You, of all cats, should know that sometimes there is nothing we can do." Spotted Leaf raised her head, and there was a fiercely determined light in her eyes. "I would do anything to help Firestar," she hissed. "I will protect him with all the power of StarClan." "But even that may not be enough," Bluestar warned her. Around them, the warriors of StarClan began to pad away from the pool, climbing the slope and slipping back through the thorn bushes until the shimmer of their pelts vanished and the only light in the hollow came from the reflection of the moon in the water. The creature in the shadows remained a moment longer, watching in silence until the last cat had gone. Then she stirred, and a shaft of moonlight struck her powerful shoulders. "Midnight, this is not your place," she growled to herself. "Midnight, this is not your place," she growled to herself. "Is no more to do." She paused and added, "Once more, maybe. With the clans I will meet, clouded, is time to come." As she turned to push away back through the thorns, the moonlight caught the broad white stripes down the badger's head. Then midnight was gone, and the hollow was left empty.
Chapter 1! Coming back after 8. I'm still here. I just gotta swim. Oh, happy swimming! I hope it goes well. This is definitely a stream where you don't really need to chat. You can just kind of hang out, do your own thing, listen while you work, draw, work out, etc., etc. Chapter 1. Brambleclaw stood at the top of the slope, gazing at the claw pricks of silver fire reflected in the lake below. The clans had finally found their new home, just as Midnight had promised. StarClan was waiting for them, and they were safe from the two-legged monsters at last. Around him, warriors from all 4 clans murmured to each other, staring uneasily at the dark, unfamiliar space at the foot of the hill. "It's impossible to tell what's down there in this light." Brightheart, a ginger and white ThunderClan warrior, swung around so that her one good eye could take in the whole of the landscape. Her mate, Cloudtail, twitched his tail. "How can that be? Think of what we've come through to get here. We can fight off anything on 4 legs. "What about the 2 legs?" demanded Russet Fur, the ShadowClan deputy. "The journey has left us all tired and weak," Black Claw of WindClan added. "Foxes and badgers could track us down easily when we're all in the open like this." For a moment, Brambleclaw felt a tremor of fear. Then he braced his shoulders. StarClan would not have brought them here if they did not believe the clans could survive in their new territories. "Well, what are we waiting for?" A new voice spoke up. "Are we just gonna stand here all night?" Shifting a meow of laughter, Brambleclaw turned to see his clanmate Squirrelpaw standing behind him. The ginger apprentice was tearing the tough, springy grass with her front paws, her green eyes glowing with anticipation. "Brambleclaw, look!" she purred. "We did it! We found our new home!" She tucked her hind legs under her, ready to dash down the hill, but before she could take off, Firestar pushed through the cats and stood in her way. "Wait." The ThunderClan leader touched his daughter's shoulder affectionately with the tip of his tail. "We'll go together, and keep a sharp lookout for trouble. This may be the place that StarClan wished us to find, but they would not expect us to leave our wits in the forest." Squirrelpaw dipped her head respectfully and stepped back, but when she shot a sideways glance at Brambleclaw, he saw that her eyes still gleamed with excitement. For Squirrelpaw, their journey's end could not possibly be scary. Firestar padded over to join Blackstar and Leopardstar, the leaders of ShadowClan and RiverClan. "I suggest we send a patrol ahead," he meowed. "Just a couple of cats, to find out what it's like down there." "Good idea, but we can't just stand here and wait for them to return," Leopardstar objected. "It's much too exposed." Blackstar grunted in agreement. "If a fox came along now, it could pick off all the weaker cats with no trouble at all." "But we need to rest." Mudclaw of WindClan came up to join the
discussion. His leader, Tallstar, lay on the ground a little ways off, with the medicine cat Barkface crouching over him. Tallstar can't go on much further. Then let's send the patrol right away, Firestar suggested, and the rest of us will follow more slowly until we find somewhere more sheltered. Yes, Mudclaw, he added as the Wind Clan deputy opened his mouth to argue. We're all tired, but we'll sleep more easily if we're not stuck out on the open hillside like this. Blackstar called Russet Fur over to him, while Leopardstar signaled with her tail for her deputy, Mistyfoot. I want you to go as far as the lake, then come straight back, Leopardstar ordered. Find out what you can, but be quick and stay out of sight. The two cats flicked their ears, then whirled and raced away, lopping along with their bellies close to the ground. Within a couple of heartbeats, they vanished into the darkness. Firestar watched them go before letting out a yowl to call the rest of the cats around him. Mudclaw went back to Tallstar and nudged the old leader to his paws. Their clans clustered together behind the leaders of ThunderClan, RiverClan, and ShadowClan, and began to follow them down the slope towards the lake. What's the matter? Squirrelpaw demanded, noticing that Brambleclaw wasn't moving. Why are you standing there like a frozen rabbit? I want... Brambleclaw glanced around and spotted his sister Tawny Pelt padding past a little ways off. He summoned her with a jerk of his head. I want all of us to go down together, he explained when the tortoiseshell she-cat joined them, all the cats who made the first journey. 4 cats were made from the 6 who had left the forest in search of a new home many moons ago. They had gained something very precious on that journey, as well as a safe place for their clans to live. A strong bond of friendship had been forged between them, stronger than rock and deeper than the endless water that washed against the cliffs where Midnight the Badger lived. Now Brambleclaw wanted to travel with his friends one more time before their duties to separate clans forced them apart. Tawny Pelt let out a purr of approval. Meeting her green gaze, Brambleclaw knew that, like him, she understood they would soon be rivals again, that the next time they met could be in battle. The pain of parting swelled in his heart, and he pressed his muzzle to his sister's, feeling her breath warm against his whiskers. Where's Crowfeather? She asked. Brambleclaw looked up and spotted the young Wind Clan warrior a few tail lengths away, anxiously pacing beside Tallstar. The Wind Clan leader looked so exhausted he could hardly put one paw in front of the other. His long tail dragged on the ground as he was leaning heavily on the brown tabby warrior One Whisker. The Wind Clan medicine cat, Barkface, walked close behind, a worried look on his face. Hey, Crowfeather! Squirrelpaw called. The Wind Clan cat bounded across. What do you want? Brambleclaw ignored his unwelcoming tone. Crowfeather's tongue was sharp enough to slice your ears off, but if danger threatened, he would fight to his last breath to defend his friends. Travel down to the lake with us, he urged. I want us to finish the journey how we started, together. Crowfeather bowed his head. There's no point, he muttered. We'll never be together again. Stormfur lives in the mountains now, and Feathertail's dead. Brambleclaw ran his tail lightly over the young warrior's shoulder. He shared his grief for the beautiful RiverClan cat who had sacrificed her life to save Crowfeather and the tribe cats from the terrible lion cat known as Sharptooth. Then Feathertail's brother Stormfur had stayed with the tribe of Rushing Water because of his love for the prey hunter Brook. Brambleclaw missed him bitterly, but knew that pain was nothing compared to the agony Crowfeather felt over Feathertail's death. Feathertail is with us now, Squirrelpaw insisted, coming to join them. Her eyes shone with the strength of her belief. If you don't know that, Crowfeather, you're even more mousebrain than I thought. And we'll see Stormfur again, I'm sure. We're closer to the mountains here than we were in the forest. Crowfeather let out a long sigh. Okay, he meowed. Let's go. Most of the cats had gone past them already, moving cautiously across the unfamiliar territory, keeping close to each other as they had done throughout the long and dangerous journey to get here. A little ways ahead, Brambleclaw saw Mothwing, the RiverClan medicine cat, walking beside a group of apprentices from all 4 clans. On the far side of the patch of gorse, the ground fell away into a grassy hollow. Tall Poppy, a ShadowClan queen, was struggling to guide her kits down the steep slope. Cloudtail and Brightheart from ThunderClan darted over to help, each picking up a kit in their jaws. Further down the slope, Cedarheart, a gray ShadowClan Tom, prowled along the edge of a thorn thicket, his gaze flicking back and forth as he kept watch for foxes and badgers that might be looking for easy prey. If he had not known these cats all his life, Brambleclaw would not have been able to distinguish one clan from another. They walked side by side, helping one another. He wondered grimly how long it would be before they were divided again, how painful that separation would be. An impatient exclamation from Squirrelpaw.
Come on, Brambleclaw. We'll leave you behind to make a den for yourself here.
He headed down the slope, pausing ever so often to draw in the night air. The scent of cat was strongest, but beneath it he could detect the scents of mouse and vole and rabbit. He couldn't remember when he had last eaten. Surely the leaders would allow them to hunt soon. He was imagining the delicious taste of fresh kill when he was startled by a hiss from Tawny Pelt, who was a couple tail lengths ahead of him. "Look at that," spat the Shadow Clan warrior, pointing with her tail. Brambleclaw's ears prickled when he saw the thin mesh of a two-leg fence shining like a huge cobweb in the pale dawn light. 2 or 3 of the other cats had paused to stare apprehensively at it as well.
"I knew we'd come across two legs sooner or later," Squirrelpaw meowed with a disgust twitch of her tail. Brambleclaw tasted the air again. He could pick up the scent of two legs, but it was faint and stale. There was another, less familiar scent, too, and he had to think hard before he remembered what it was.
"Horses," Crowfeather confirmed his guess. "There's one over there."
He gestured with his tail, and Brambleclaw noticed a large, dark shape standing under a clump of trees some way inside the fence. He thought there was another one beside it, though it was hard to tell in the shadows cast by the branches.
"What are horses?" Whitepaw mewed worriedly as she peered through the fence. "Nothing to worry about," Tornir from Windclan reassured her, touching the apprentice's shoulder with the tip of his tail. "They used to run across our territory sometimes, with 2 legs on their back." Whitetail blinked as if she couldn't quite believe him. "We saw them on our journey to the Sundrown Water," Brambleclaw added. "They didn't take any notice of us when we crossed their field. It's the 2 legs looking after them we need to watch out for." "I don't see any 2-leg nests," Tawny Pelt pointed out. "Maybe those horse things look after themselves." "Let's hope so," meowed Brambleclaw. "Horses alone shouldn't bother us."
"Provided we stay away from their clumsy feet," added Squirrelpaw. The cats followed the 2-leg fence until they came to a thicket of trees where the other cats were gathering. Glancing around, Brambleclaw spotted Cinderpelt, the ThunderClan medicine cat, and her apprentice, Leafpaw, Squirrelpaw's sister.
"What's going on?" Squirrelpaw demanded. "Why are we stopping?" "The patrol leader's scent has just come back," Cinderpelt explained. Following her gaze, Brambleclaw saw the leaders of the 4 clans and the Wind Clan deputy, Mudclaw, standing close together beside a tree stump. Mistyfoot and Russetfur, who had been sent on the patrol, faced them. The other cats had sunk down on the short, springy grass around the tree stump, glad of the chance to rest. With the others behind him, Brambleclaw weaved through the cats until he was close enough to hear what the clan leaders were saying. Mistyfoot was just giving her report. "The ground's very boggy by the lake. There's no point going any further until daylight. We don't want to lose any cats in the mud." "Shadow Clan is used to wet ground under paw," Blackstar reminded her, before any of the other leaders could comment. "But we'll stay with the rest of you if that's what you want." There was an edge to his tone, as if Shadow Clan were granting them a huge favor by not going ahead to explore on their own. Brambleclaw narrowed his eyes. It seemed too soon for the clans to begin competing with one another over who claimed which part of the new territory. He had grown used to having all 4 clans around him, ignoring the differences that had kept them apart for more seasons than any cat could remember. He was also afraid that some cats were weaker and more exhausted than others, which might make any clashes more damaging than they needed to be. He hoped the leaders would decide to stay where they were for the rest of the night. The hills were still close enough to cut down the force of the wind, and the trees provided even more welcoming shelter. A strong scent of prey drifted from the shadows, and his paws itched to hunt. "I think we should stay here," Firestar meowed, to Brambleclaw's relief. "We all need to rest, and it sounds pretty uncomfortable by the lake." Leopardstar murmured agreement. Before Firestar had finished speaking, Tallstar collapsed onto his side and lay there panting, as if he couldn't manage a single paw step more. Mudclaw stalked up to him, sniffed him briefly, and spoke a word or 2 in his ear. "Tallstar looks exhausted," Brambleclaw murmured to Crowfeather. "This is his last life, isn't it?" Crowfeather nodded, his face somber. "He'll be fine now that we're here," he meowed, though Brambleclaw suspected that he was trying to convince himself as much as any other cat. Blackstar leaped up on top of the tree stump. Oops. The powerful white Tom stood with tail held high, his huge black paws planted on the rough wood. He let out a commanding yowl, and the faces of all the cats turned towards him to listen. "Cats of all the clans," he called as the last stragglers came up. "We have reached the place StarClan meant us to find, but we are all tired and hungry. We will make camp here until we have rested."
"Who asked him to speak for the leaders?" Squirrelpaw muttered. Her green eyes flashed indignantly as Brambleclaw, spotting a couple of ShadowClan warriors within earshot, silenced her with a flick of his tail across her mouth.
What about fresh kill?
A cat called from the back. "We will wait until sunrise," Blackstar replied. "Then the prey will be running and there'll be enough for us all." "Meanwhile, we ought to keep watch," Firestar added, leaping up beside Blackstar so that the ShadowClan leader had to step back a pace. "Deputies, find 2 or 3 warriors who can stay awake for a while longer. We don't want foxes sneaking up while we're still asleep." Mudclaw, who seemed to be speaking for WindClan since Tallstar was so weak, meowed his agreement, followed by RiverClan leader Leopardstar. The brief meeting broke up and the cats began looking for places to sleep. Barkface nudged Tallstar to his feet and helped him to a clump of long grass, where the frail WindClan leader lay down again, trembling from nose to tail. One Whisker sat close to him and began to lick his fur gently. "I guess I'll be needed," Crowfeather mewed, and he loped away to join the other WindClan cats. Tawnypelt touched noses with her brother. "I'd better check in with Russet Fur," she meowed. "I'll see you later, Brambleclaw." Whisking around, she headed for another group of her clanmates who were clustered around the ShadowClan deputy. Brambleclaw wondered if he ought to volunteer to keep watch, even though he had been a warrior for fewer than 4 seasons. ThunderClan needed every cat to help feed and protect their clanmates, especially since they had lost their deputy just before leaving the forest. Shivering, Brambleclaw remembered how Greystripe had been trapped by Two Legs and carried away inside a 2-leg monster. He glanced at Firestar to see his leader giving orders to Sorreltail and Breakenfur. He guessed he wouldn't be needed right away, so he looked around to see if any of the other ThunderClan cats could use his help. Dustpelt stood in the shadows beneath the trees with his mate, Ferncloud, and their son, Birchkit, the only one of their last litter to survive the lack of prey back in the forest. Ferncloud was crouched over Longtail, nosing him anxiously as he lay in the grass. Longtail was not many seasons older than Dustpelt, but he had been forced to join the elders when his eyesight failed. The journey from the forest had been particularly hard for him. Goldenflower, Brambleclaw's mother, lay close to his flank on the other side. She was the oldest ThunderClan queen, and Brambleclaw realized with a pang of sympathy that she looked too weary to do anything more than press her warm fur against Longtail. Dustpelt nudged the pale tabby Tom's shoulder. "Come on, Longtail," he meowed. "Not far now." As Squirrelpaw bounded over to help, Brambleclaw spotted a sheltered place where the ground fell away a couple of tail lengths beyond the clump of trees. Grass grew thickly there, and a few bushes with long growing branches. "What about making a den over there?" he suggested, pointing with his tail. "Good idea," meowed Dustpelt. He nosed Longtail again. "It's all right, Longtail. You can sleep as long as you want once you get to a more sheltered place." Longtail heaved himself to his paws. Squirrelpaw padded beside him with her tail curled around his neck to guide him. Brambleclaw let Goldenflower lean on his shoulder, while Ferncloud encouraged Birchkit to follow. "This had better be the place we're looking for," Dustpelt remarked, looking around at the exhausted cats. "None of us have the strength to travel any further." Brambleclaw didn't reply. He knew Dustpelt was right, but he couldn't tell him that for sure. Tell him for sure that this was the place StarClan had meant them to find. He watched the others slide between the branches and settle onto piles of dry leaves under the bushes. Catching a glimpse of Leafpaw padding past with a mouthful of moss for bedding, he recalled the medicine cat apprentices' unquestioning faith that their warrior ancestors had made the journey with them. He wished he could feel the same certainty. All along he had clung to the belief that their troubles would be over when they reached their new territory. Now, daunted by the strangeness of everything around him, he could see they were only just beginning. Squirrelpaw's voice broke into his thoughts.
Dustpelt, do you want us to hunt for you?
His mentor flicked her ear with his tail. "No, we'll all hunt later. Look at you. You're asleep on your paws. Go with Brambleclaw and get some rest."
Okay.
Squirrelpaw's jaws split into an enormous yawn. "What about under that gorse bush?" Brambleclaw led the way to the spot he had pointed out a few tail lengths up the slope and crawled under the lowest spots. Squirrelpaw followed him and curled into a tight ball with her tail over her nose.
Good night.
She murmured indistinctly. Brambleclaw scrabbled the degree underneath the bush until he had made a comfortable nest. Curling up close to Squirrelpaw, he breathed in her warm, familiar scent. He was glad that they had not made a proper camp yet, where warriors and apprentices would have their separate dens. He would miss sleeping next to Squirrelpaw, he realized with the last flicker of conscious thought. Then sleep covered him like the lapping of a soft black wave.
Hello, Nostril. Hello, Naoki.
Pretzels. I got iced tea too. Holy moly. Brambleclaw's dreams were dark and confused. He was searching for something in the middle of a thick forest, but he could not remember what he was looking for, and every path he took ended abruptly in tangles of briar and impassable walls of thorn. In desperation, he tried to force his way through, but a branch poked him painfully in the side.
Wake up, Brambleclaw. You've been asleep forever. What do you think you are, a hedgehog?
Brambleclaw's eyes flew open to see Squirrelpaw prodding him with her forepaw. Watery yellow daylight was seeping through the branches of the gorse bush.
It's morning, Squirrelpaw went on. Let's go and see if we can hunt. If you can stop hibernating, that is.
Blinking sleep from his eyes, Brambleclaw staggered to his paws, shook scrapes of dead leaf from his pelt, and followed Squirrelpaw into the open. The confusion of his dreams slipped away when he remembered where he was, but it was replaced with a renowned feeling of anxiety as he looked at the landscape in daylight for the first time. He wondered if this vast, unfamiliar place would ever seem like home. A cold breeze blew, ridging the surface of the lake and rattling through the reeds that edged the shore. The shining gray water stretched in front of Brambleclaw for almost as far as he could see. Above the hills that rose on one side, a glow in the sky showed where the sun would shortly rise. Back the way they had come, the land sloped up more gently to bare moorland. The two-leg fence stretched across it, and in the glowing light, Brambleclaw could just make out a couple of two-legged nests in the distance. He let out a faint sound of approval. Such small nests couldn't hold many two-legs, and being so far away, they were unlikely to interfere with the clans. Further around the lake, below the hills, was a smudge that looked like gray-green mist. Brambleclaw realized it was a mass of leafless branches stretching along the shore and up to the crest of the ridge. His heart lifted to think that soon he could be underneath trees again, however strange they might be. At the far end of the lake, the gray smudge of trees darkened, and Brambleclaw guessed that they were pines, still green in depths of leaf bare. They covered the ground like a gently rippling pelt as the wind stirred them. The glow on the horizon grew too bright to look as the sun edged up. The last stars were fading, and the sky was a clear, pale blue. Time to hunt, Brambleclaw meowed to Squirrelpaw, who was standing beside him. He looked around for Firestar, one of the senior warriors, to find out if any patrols were being sent out. His leader was emerging from a nearby gorse thicket with Leopardstar, Blackstar, and Mudclaw. The leaders must have been holding a meeting, Brambleclaw guessed, and he felt a twinge of apprehension to see Mudclaw in Tallstar's place, representing WindClan. I wonder if Tallstar went to join StarClan during the night, he muttered, his belly clenching with grief at the thought. Squirrelpaw shook her head. I don't think so, she mewed, or they would have brought his body out so his clan could pay their respects. Brambleclaw hoped she was right. Before he could say anything else, Firestar leaped onto the tree stump where the leaders had addressed the clans yesterday. Blackstar jumped up beside him, and Mudclaw scrambled up on the other side. There was barely room for all three cats to stand together on the flat top of the stump, so Leopardstar did not try to join them, but sat on a twisted root at the base. We need a new place to hold gatherings, Squirrelpaw remarked. Firestar's yowl, calling the clans together, interrupted her. Stems of grass and fern parted, and the branches of bushes shook as cats emerged from their sleeping places. They all looked thin and worn, easy prey for any hostile creature the territory might conceal, and they glanced around nervously, as if they could feel hungry eyes burning into their pelts on every side. Brambleclaw bounded down the slope towards the stump, with Squirrelpaw close behind. Halfway down, he spotted Tallstar's black and white shape curled in the grass where he had gone to sleep the night before. The WindClan medicine cat, Barkface, was sitting beside him, sniffing anxiously at his fur. Neither cat made any attempt to join the others gathered around the tree stump. It was obvious Tallstar wasn't well enough to take part in the meeting. Cats of all clans, Firestar was announcing as Brambleclaw reached his clanmates. Today there are decisions to be made, tasks to be carried out. Hunting patrols will go out right away, Mudclaw interrupted, shouldering Firestar aside. What the heck, rude. WindClan will take the hills and RiverClan can fish in the lake. ThunderClan. His clanmate One-Whisker sprang to his paws with a hiss of anger.
Mudclaw, what do you think you're doing giving orders like this? He growled. Last time I looked, Tallstar was still leader of WindClan.
Not for much longer. Brambleclaw blinked in surprise at the deputy's cold voice. He hoped Tallstar hadn't heard, and, craning his neck, he was relieved to see the old cat was still sleeping in his grassy nest with Barkface beside him. Some cat has to take charge, Mudclaw went on. Or do you want to be the other? You want the other clans to divide the territory among themselves and lead WindClan out?
As if we would,
Squirrelpaw mewed indignantly. One-Whisker glared at Mudclaw, his fur bristling and his eyes blazing with fury.
Show a bit of respect, he spat. Tallstar was the leader for our clan while you were a kit, mewling in the nursery.
I'm not a kit now, Mudclaw retorted. I'm the deputy, and Tallstar hasn't done much to lead us since we left the forest. That's enough. Firestar silenced the WindClan deputy with a wave of his tail. One-Whisker, I know you're worried about Tallstar. Mudclaw's only doing his duty.
He needn't act like he's already leader,
One-Whisker growled. He sat down with a sharp glance from side to side, as if he were challenging any other cat to make a comment. One-Whisker has a fair point, Firestar went on to Mudclaw. It's difficult for a deputy to stand in front of their leader. Stand in for their leader. Difficult for the rest of the clans as well for the deputy. Mudclaw, who had raised his head arrogantly when Firestar seemed to be backing him up, looked furious. His jaws parted, but before he could speak, he was forestalled by Blackstar. If WindClan has a problem over their leadership, let them discuss it in private. We're wasting time. Mudclaw let out an angry hiss and pointedly turned his back. Brambleclaw flexed his claws, ready to spring if the WindClan deputy caused more trouble. Mudclaw was one of the most aggressive cats in all 4 clans, and he had never liked Firestar or ThunderClan. Brambleclaw could foresee trouble when he became WindClan's leader, especially now, when the new clan boundaries had to be established. Firestar's voice interrupted his troubled thoughts. I would like to start ThunderClan's life here by honoring a new warrior. Squirrelpaw, where are you?
What? Me?
In her astonishment, Squirrelpaw squeaked like a kit. She sprang to her paws, her ears pricked and her tail standing straight up. Yes, you. Brambleclaw saw a gleam of amusement in Firestar's eyes as he beckoned to his daughter. ThunderClan owes you more than I can say for making the journey to the Sundrown Place and helping lead the clans to its new home. Dustpelt and I agreed that if ever an apprentice deserved her warrior name, you do. Brambleclaw stretched out and gently touched his muzzle against the tip of Squirrelpaw's ear. Go on, he murmured. Firestar's right. You deserve to become a warrior after everything you've done for the clan. She blinked at him, too shocked to speak, then turned and picked her way to the tree stump where Firestar was waiting. Before she reached it, her mother, Sandstorm, stepped forward. Squirrelpaw stopped in front of her. Sandstorm's eyes glowed with pride, and as she gave her daughter a few swift licks to smooth her fur. Brambleclaw watched Leafpaw come over as well to press her muzzle against her sister's side. Squirrelpaw's mentor, Dustpelt, padded up to lead her the rest of the way to the stump, and he stood beside her as they waited for Firestar to speak. Firestar leaped down and blinked encouragingly at Squirrelpaw before lifting his head to address the gathering cats. This is the first time any cat has spoken these words in our new home, he began. I, Firestar, leader of ThunderClan, call upon my warrior ancestors to look down on this apprentice. She has trained hard to understand the ways of your noble code, and I commend her to you as a warrior in her turn. There was a burning intensity in his eyes, and Brambleclaw understood how much this moment meant to Firestar, not just for ThunderClan, but for all 4 clans that had journeyed here from their home far away. By calling upon StarClan to make a new warrior, they were claiming this unfamiliar place as their own. There had been many, many times on the journey where they had feared that they had left their warrior ancestors behind, but Firestar addressed them now as confidently as if their starry spirits glowed overhead. Brambleclaw felt his fur prickle with guilt, wishing he could be so certain that StarClan had made the journey with them. Still, he told himself, they had reached somewhere that looked as if it would make a safe home for the clans. Perhaps this leader was right to feel confident. He shook his head, forcing his concerns away, and listened to the warrior ceremony. Squirrelpaw, the ThunderClan leader was saying, do you promise to uphold the warrior code and protect and defend your clan even at the cost of your life? Squirrelpaw's reply rang out clearly. I do. Then, by the powers of StarClan, I give you your warrior name. Squirrelpaw, from this moment, you will be known as Squirrelflight. StarClan honors your courage and your determination, and we welcome you as a full warrior to ThunderClan. Firestar rested his muzzle on Squirrelflight's head, and she gave his shoulder a respectful lick. Determination was an unusual virtue to mention in the warrior ceremony. In Squirrelflight, it sometimes showed as stubbornness, and had led her close to trouble more than once. Brambleclaw wondered if father and daughter were remembering all the times they had clashed, when Squirrelflight's fierce independence had brought her into conflict with her leader and the warrior code. But then, Brambleclaw reflected, there had been times on their journey where her determination and will to succeed had pushed fresh heart into all her companions. Pride flooded him as he remembered her tireless courage, her refusal to think they would ever fail to reach their journey's end. When she stepped away from Firestar, Paw bounded up to her, greeting her by her new name. Squirrelflight! Squirrelflight! Her call was taken up by the cats around them. Squirrelflight looked around, her green eyes shining with pride. All 4 clans seemed pleased that she had been given her warrior name. But then, all 4 clans had had plenty of opportunity to see how much she had deserved it. As Brambleclaw thrust his way to her side, he saw Tawny Pelt and Crowfeather heading towards her too. Those who had made the journey to Midnight's Cave would always have the most special bond with Squirrelflight. Congratulations, Tawny Pelt meowed, while Crowfeather nodded and rested his tail tip on her shoulder for a moment. Brambleclaw pressed his muzzle to hers. Hold on, Squirrelflight, he murmured. Mind you, he added teasingly, you still have to pay attention to senior warriors. Squirrelflight's eyes gleamed with wicked amusement. You can't order me around now. I'm not an apprentice anymore. I can't see that it will make much difference, Dustpelt put in, overhearing her. You never did as you were told anyway. Squirrelflight let out a meow of laughter and affectionately butted her former mentor on his shoulder. I must have listened to something, she meowed. She blinked and added, Really, thanks for everything, Dustpelt. The meows of welcome died down as Blackstar stepped forward and signaled with his tail for silence. This is all very touching, but now we must find out about this new place so that we can start establishing our new territories. We're going to send a patrol with 1 cat from each clan to explore the lakeshore and land around it. Brambleclaw's ears pricked, and he felt Squirrelflight tense beside him, her pelt just brushing his. He caught Tawny Pelt's eyes and saw an answering gleam of anticipation. We decided to send 3 of the cats who had made the first journey together, Firestar went on. Brambleclaw from ThunderClan, Crowfeather from WindClan, and Tawny Pelt from ShadowClan. Excitement thrilled through Brambleclaw from ears to tail tip. He felt right that the cats who had made the first journey should be chosen. Blackstar curled his lip as Firestar named each cat, but didn't argue. Ha! Tawny Pelt muttered. This is the first time he's ever let me represent ShadowClan. Brambleclaw swept his tail soothingly over her shoulder. He knew that Blackstar was unlikely to forget that Tawny Pelt had been born in ThunderClan, however hard she tried to prove she was loyal warrior of ShadowClan. Mistyfoot will go for RiverClan, meowed Leopardstar, speaking for the first time, and reminding Brambleclaw painfully that neither of the RiverClan cats who had made the journey was still with their clan. A hollow place yawned inside him as he thought of Feathertail and Stormfur. But what about me? Squirrelflight protested. I went on the journey too. Why can't I go on the patrol? Because that would make 2 cats from ThunderClan, Blackstar replied crushingly. Brambleclaw knew that the ShadowClan leader was wrong if he thought that would silence Squirrelflight. A patrol of 4 cats isn't enough to go into unknown territory, she objected. Blackstar opened his mouth to disagree, but Firestar spoke first. She could be right, he pointed out. I think we should let her go.
It could be her first warrior task. She can't sit vigil tonight like the other new warriors, as we have no proper camp. Blackstar glanced at Leopardstar, who twitched her tail and giving nothing away, and then at Mudclaw, who dipped his head.
WindClan has no objections, he meowed. Very well, Blackstar growled, but don't think for one moment that we'll give ThunderClan any extra rights over territory.
Brambleclaw exchanged an exasperated glance with Crowfeather. Trust Blackclaw to think that the other clans were trying to steal an advantage before the new territories had been divided up. Of course not, Firestar replied evenly. Squirrelflight, you may go with the patrol. Squirrelflight's Why is her name so complicated? Squirrelflight's tail curled up in delight. Go all the way around the lake and explore as much of the surrounding land as you can, Firestar instructed. We need to know what kind of territory it is and where the best hunting places will be. Think about the different sorts of hunting each clan will require, because it might help with setting boundaries later on. It would be good to get an idea of how the territory could be split up and where might be good places for camps. And keep a close watch for two-legs or anything that might be dangerous. Is that all? Crowfeather muttered. I reckon you'll need 2 days to travel all the way around the lake, Firestar went on. He lifted his head and narrowed his eyes as he peered across the water, trying to judge the distance. Try not to spend too much time exploring. We're exposed to danger while we stay here, so we need to get all the clans settled as soon as we can. We'll do our best, Firestar, a new voice called out. Brambleclaw glanced over his shoulder to see Mistyfoot, the River Clan deputy, padding over to join them. Hi there, he mewed, moving up to make room for her. Mistyfoot looked wary about joining the close band of cats that had made the first journey. Good luck, called Leopardstar, and Firestar added, May StarClan go with you all. By now the sun had risen well above the hills. His paws itching to be off, Brambleclaw dipped his head towards Firestar and the other leaders, and raised his tail to signal the others to follow him. Out of the corner of his eyes he saw Tawny Pelt wince, and he heard a hissing intake of breath from Crowfeather. His fur prickled with embarrassment as he realized that Mistyfoot ought to be in charge of the patrol, since she was the deputy of her clan. He stopped and took a pace back. Mistyfoot gave him a long, cool look, then nodded briefly to him as she took the lead. Mouse brain, Squirrelflight whispered. They headed for the edge of the lake, with Blackstar's voice drifting behind them on the breeze as he began to arrange a hunting patrol. Squirrelflight, wait! Brambleclaw looked back to see Leafpaw bounding... Oh, sorry. Squirrelflight, wait! Brambleclaw looked back to see Leafpaw bounding after her sister. Be careful, won't you? She begged. Squirrelflight touched noses with the young medicine cat. Don't worry about us, she meowed. We can look after ourselves. But you're as tired as the rest of us from the journey, Leafpaw warned. Hunt as soon as you can, and don't stray too far from the lake or you might get lost. Squirrelflight brushed her tail across Leafpaw's mouth to stop her. We'll be fine, she insisted. She lifted her head and pointed with her nose to the gleaming stretch of water below them. Look, you can see exactly where we're going. We'll be back before you know it. She paused for a moment, then added quietly, Have you had any sign from StarClan? Is that why you're so worried? Oh, have you had a sign from StarClan? Leafpaw shook her head. No, nothing like that, I promise. It's just hard to let you go again. It feels too much like the first time you left, when you went to the Sundrown place. Brambleclaw went over and rested his muzzle against Leafpaw's shoulder to comfort her. And we came safely home, didn't we? Trust me, Leafpaw. I'll look after her. Squirrelflight jerked away in mock indignation. I don't need looking after. It's more likely to be me watching over your battered old fur. Leafpaw gave a purr of amusement, letting them lighten the mood. Well, just take care, all of you. And if you have a chance to look out for any herbs, that would be great. Our medicine supplies will need refilling very soon. Squirrelflight licked her ear. Sure, I'll keep my eyes open. When I'm not looking for foxes, badgers, two-legs, thunderpaths. Are we going or not? Growled Crowfeather. We don't have much daylight, and we need to get at least halfway around the lake before nightfall. Leafpaw ignored him. StarClan go with you, she murmured to Squirrelflight, before whisking around and bounding back up the slope. Brambleclaw tasted the air and listened to the lapping of waves on the shore. The gray water was flooded with color as the sun rose higher over the hills. It stretched ahead so far that the trees on the distant shore were nothing more than a greenish blur, and curved hungrily around the marshy land in front of them. Something about the stillness of the water, the silence that hung over it like mist, told Brambleclaw that it was much, much deeper than the river and the forest, even when it flooded. He gave Mistyfoot a swift, sidelong glance. She looked daunted, too. Like all River Clan cats, she was an excellent swimmer. As if aware that his eyes were on her, the River Clan deputy gave herself a shake. Right, she meowed, gazing around the patrol. This is it. Let's see what your Star Clan has brought us. That was chapter 1. We're on chapter 2 now. Page 50. Chapter 2, page 50. What the heck? Sheesh. Well. They did. Let me finish eating my crescent real quickly, okay? Oh. Croissant. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, one more sippy. I bought my cat some goat milk. Actually, I bought Honey some raw food recently because I really want to put her back on raw food, but she's been really picky. And she ate a little bit and then refused it the second time. But I have a backup plan, which is raw freeze-dried food, which she was eating a lot of. Except she stopped eating it for some reason. So I got goat milk, like cat goat milk. Wait, did you do anything different with your mic setup and keyboards? Your keyboard sounded so crisp. Really? Huh? Does it sound bad? Or is it just like really, really vivid? I should probably... The thing is, I have to unpack boxes still for my room. And I don't want to... I don't want to like change my mic settings until all of that is done. Because I know it's going to make the sound so much different from doing it now to doing it later, and I'm so tired of messing with my mic. I'll be honest, I'm so tired. Real. Then again, I don't really have much in my room. I do want to like get a cool chair in here, like a lounge chair that maybe I can like sit on and play video games on or something. I don't know. My butt plant is looking exactly the same as it did before. I'm eager to see it grow, so I hope it grows. Okay, let us continue. The butt sealant must live. Yes, the butt sealant. I love it so much. It's so funny. I'm excited to see its true colors because it's so scarred up right now that I can't really make out what the original color was. It looks green, but it also looks a little bit brown, and there's like 34 different variations of butt succulents, butt sealants, that I don't know what it is. Yeah! I'm kind of like wanting to get more. Like maybe once I've mastered the butt sealant, I'll get like a big pot and have like a bunch of them. And then it'll be really cool. The plant addiction begins. It only begins slowly because I know I'm really, really bad at taking care of plants. That's why I think the butt sealant will be very good because they need very little water. I think they need to be watered like once a year or something silly like that. At least not very much at winter time at all. So, yeah. I'm glad about that. I'm glad about that. I've killed so many plants. It's so sad. And then the one plant that I tried to take care of really well, my aloe vera plant that you guys remember my aloe vera plant, Claire? She died of root rot because I watered her too much. Truly sad. She was the only one that I killed by overwatering. The other ones all died of starvation. Star-driveness? Yeah, root rot. So sad. I miss her. Okay, chapter 2. Wonder how long this one's gonna be. Thirst! They thirst! But I also had, Venus fly-eating traps. I had a few of those, which I needed to feed, like actual feed. But I didn't do that enough, or it was really hard. It was really hard. I fed like spiders to it though. Okay. Chapter 2. Leafpaw stopped halfway up the slope and turned to watch her sister and the rest of the patrol make their way down to the lake. From the tingling of her own fur, she could tell how excited Squirrelflight was, not just at the prospect of exploring the new territory, but because she was with the friends she had made on the journey to the Sundrun place once more. For a few heartbeats, Leafpaw felt almost breathless with envy, wishing that she could have a bond that strong, based on what depth of trust and that many shared experiences with another cat. Her gaze was drawn to the lean, gray-black shape of Crowfeather. Of all the others, he was the hardest to understand. Leafpaw wished she knew him better. He seemed the least willing to trust cats from another clan. Yet during the long journey through the mountains, she had seen him put himself in danger over and over again to help cats who weren't from Wind Clan. Leafpaw's pelt prickled, making her shiver from nose to tail. Something told her Crowfeather had an important path laid out by StarClan, but she had no idea where it might lead. Nor was there any reason for StarClan to let her know the destiny of a cat from another clan. Spicy. She likes a mysterious man. She jumped as something brushed against her shoulder and turned to see Cinderpelt gazing at her with wise blue eyes. "You wish you were going with them?" the medicine cat asked. Leafpaw hesitated. She was a medicine cat, not a warrior. Her duties lay with her weak and exhausted clan, so why did she feel a tug in her paws to follow the little patrol that was padding away along the line of the shore? Her mind flooded with an image of bounding after them to walk alongside Crowfeather, who was bringing up the rear. She drew herself in sharply, almost able to feel his dark gray pelt brush against hers as they picked their way over the tufts of boggy grass. "Bro, are you all right?" mewed Cinderpelt, looking at her closely. Leafpaw blinked. Yes, fine, of course. I don't want to go with the patrol. There's enough work for me here." "That's true," Cinderpelt meowed. "We have 4 clans of exhausted cats to look after, and our stock of healing herbs barely amounts to a couple of leaves and a paw full of crushed berries." Leafpaw gulped, suddenly wondering if she should have gone with the patrol after all to look for new supplies of medicine. "We're going to meet with the other medicine cats," Cinderpelt went on. "We need to discuss what to do about finding new herbs, and how are we going to share tongues with our warrior ancestors when we are so far from the high stones." She gazed up at the sky, where the half-moon drifted behind wisps of cloud, and her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I hope we find another moonstone place soon." She gestured with her tail, and Leafpaw saw her friend Mothwing, the River Clan medicine cat, sitting in the shelter of a bramble thicket with Little Cloud, the medicine cat from Shadow Clan. Around them, warriors and apprentices from all 4 clans were dividing into groups as the hunting patrols prepared to leave. Cinderpelt waited until most of the patrols had gone before joining the other medicine cats. Leafpaw bounded over to touch noses with Mothwing. Mothwing blinked nervously at her. "I feel so helpless," she murmured to into Leafpaw's ear. "I have no supplies, and the cats are so tired and weak." Leafpaw wasn't surprised that her friend was anxious. Although Mothwing had trained as a warrior and received her warrior name several seasons ago, she had not been a medicine cat apprentice for as long as Leafpaw. The death of Mudfur before they left the forest meant that she had to take on all the responsibilities of a medicine cat before she had finished her training. Leafpaw felt a wave of gratitude that Cinderpelt was alive and young and strong enough to live for many, many more moons. She was in no hurry to lose her mentor, and she didn't envy Mothwing at all. But she reminded herself that Mothwing had been taught well, and she would be able to ask the other medicine cats for advice if she needed to. Besides, in this new place they would all have things to learn. She gave Mothwing's ear a quick lick. "You'll be fine," she promised. "We'll all help you." Cinderpelt glanced around. "Where's Barkface?" "Still with Tallstar, I guess," Little Cloud replied. He let out a sigh. "I'm not sure there's much any cat can do for him now." Leafpaw flinched. It didn't seem fair that StarClan should summon the Wind Clan leader to join them when he hadn't even seen his clan's new home. "Here he comes now." Cinderpelt twitched her ears to where Barkface was approaching, with his head bowed and his tail trailing. "How's Tallstar?" Little Cloud demanded. "Little Cloud wouldn't demand. He's a nice guy." I'm changing that. Little Cloud asked, politely. With sympathy. Yeah. "How's Tallstar?" Little Cloud asked Little Cloud asked politely. His voice filled with sympathy. Barkface heaved a sigh from the depths of his belly as he flopped down under the brambles beside the other medicine cats. "Sleeping," he replied. "He is very weak. The journey has been too much for him, and it is clear that StarClan is waiting for him to join them." "Is there anything you can do?" Leafpaw meowed. Barkface shook his head. "We have traveled all the way from the forest, but Tallstar has a longer journey than all of us ahead of him. He has been a noble leader, but he cannot go on forever." All the clans will honor him, Cinderpelt murmured. She bowed her head for a moment and then straightened up, giving her fur a shake. "Meanwhile, there are tasks that we must do." "We need to look for herbs," Mothwing meowed. "Disease could spread easily when we're all tired and hungry." "True," replied Cinderpelt. "Soon we'll go and search, and hope that StarClan leads us to where we need. But before that—" Her voice trailed off, and she scratched at the ground with her forepaw before she went on. "There may be a patrol out looking for new camps for each clan, but we need more than that if this is to be our home. Where are the clans going to gather at a full moon? What about the Moonstone? It's many days' journey from here to Mothermouth." Leafpaw's paws ached at the thought of retracing her steps all along the weary paths they had followed since they left the High Stones. Surely it would be impossible to travel there every half moon to meet with StarClan. But where would the new leaders go now to receive their names and their 9 lives? There was a long pause. None of the cats had the answer, or knew where to suggest looking. "Are we sure this is the right place?" Little Cloud mewed at last. "Without the Moonstones, the only way we can reach StarClan is through dreams and signs, and I've seen nothing to reassure me that this is where we're supposed to be." It must be right," Leafpaw pleaded. She struggled to think of how she could make the other medicine cats believe her, when they were so much more experienced than she was. "Stoneteller met with his tribe's warrior ancestors in the Cave of Pointed Stones," she added, remembering their visit to the tribe of Rushing Water. "So maybe there are other places like Moonstone." "I believe that StarClan sent us a sign when we saw their reflections shining in the lake," Cinderpelt mewed, and Leafpaw felt the fur on her shoulders lie down in her relief. "But we still need a place to where we can share tongues with them." "Maybe they'll send us a sign to tell us where we can find another Moonstone," Barkface suggested. "Maybe." Little Cloud sounded dubious. "I just hope it's soon, that's all." "But does it really matter?" Mothwing asked. "I mean, there's nothing to stop us from finding the right herbs, and..." Her voice died away as the other medicine cats stared at her in astonishment. Leafpaw winced. How could Mothwing believe that the only task of a medicine cat was to heal? Mothwing's gaze flicked from one cat to the next, uncertainty and embarrassment in her eyes. Mothwing means we can carry on looking after our clanmates while we wait for StarClan to speak to us, Leafpaw meowed helpfully. Mothwing turned to her in relief. Yes, that's right. Cinderpelt's ears twitched. I suppose we could start restocking our supplies, meowed Little Cloud. Barkface heaved himself to his paws. If you don't mind, I ought to stay with Tallstar, but I'd be grateful for some Clotsfoot, if you can find it. He's having trouble breathing. There'll be no Clotsfoot leaves until New Leaf, Mothwing pointed out anxiously. Would juniper berries do as well? Barkface nodded. Quite right. Thanks, Mothwing. What the? Oh my gosh. Nano Monster, I'm so sorry. I forgot to open up Mix It Up. Update? I guess so. I'll give it to you quick, okay? No wonder I thought something was sussy. I thought I was missing something. Imagine if there was a Warrior Cats film adaptation where all the dialogue was just replaced with cats meowing and nobody watching had a clue what was even going on. It's so funny you say that because the Warrior Clan, or not the Warrior Clan, the Warrior Cats fandom has been waiting for a movie or TV series or anything for years. And it just doesn't make sense how it's not happened yet. They say that places have bought rights for it, but like not really. Or like if they did, then they don't really do anything with it. It's quite funny. Okay, I got it open. I'm gonna give you a free cheek pat. Where's my cheeky pat? There it is. There we go. Thank you for the cheek pat. Oh my gosh, it's almost like you did it. Oh no, I had work late today. No, Van, I missed you. I was wondering where you were. The first chapter, it's so funny because technically we're only on the second chapter, but we are 60 pages in. The first chapter was 50 pages long. What has happened so far? Mostly just, they were trying to decide what to do. They sent out a patrol, or they arrived, it was night. They sent out a patrol to kind of glance around. It was too dark. They decided to find like places to sleep. Then in the morning, they decided that they would send all the cats who traveled to the Sundrawn place to scout out the whole territory, like the whole lakeside area. But since there's no River Clan cat anymore, they had Mistyfoot join them, and Squirrelflight also joined them. Squirrelflight became a warrior. She's a warrior now. And so they're all off on a journey, or like scouting out the areas. Tallstar is very, very close to death. He's very exhausted. It's a concern. Leafpaw had a moment where she was like watching the patrol leave and was like staring at Crowfeather and was like, oh, to be close to Crowfeather and know what is on his mind. Oh, I can almost imagine myself close to him and walking so our fur brushes. And then Cinderpelt's like, what are you up to? And then she was like, nothing. That was something new. We're gonna add another few to the counter soon, looking at the title. Starlight? I know, so funny. It's gonna begin soon. Also, hold on guys. I really need to fix that cheek pat. Please ignore this. Please ignore this. Where's my more pats? Is that it? No. Oh, dang it, I can't do it. Hold on. We'll turn off this. Immediately starts a battle for territory. Yeah. Look at all my, these are from my karaoke stream. England, emo, goofy, gremlin, head pat, melody. What's melody, I wonder? That one doesn't have a thing though. Is this more pads? No, that's a re-rig. Old nerd. No, truff model. Pat. Pochi Warriors. Pochi Warrior cat. Dad. Cheek pat. No, that's red. This one. All right. Are you? Is it on right now? Item cheek pat was saved. What the? No, I want it. I want to edit it. How do I edit it? Anger. These can be loaded, unloaded. Stream and listen to the first part later. I'm tired of missing Warrior streams. I miss you! Cheek pat. Stop. How do I toggle you? CE numpad 5? Nice! Okay, and now I'll move you so you're not on my hair. Nope. Like this. Oh. Is it turning? Can you tell? Yay! Okay, that's good. And then we'll save it. To the very bottom. Select. Save. Cheek pat. And then we'll go here. We'll go here. And then stop after. And then we'll go CE numpad 5. And now let's do a cheek pat and test. Heck yeah! We've been doing it. All right. Let us continue our journey into the warrior couch realm. Oh yeah, the blood red will become red. Oh no, that's not it. There was a prophecy. A prophecy Yellowfang gave at the very beginning of the book. Something about blood will run before peace. The lake will run red. Something, etc., etc. Okay, let's continue. Quite right. Oh, sorry. We'll bring you some, Cinderpelt promised. With a brief grunt of thanks, Sparkface padded to the clump of grass where Tall Star lay, an unmoving heap of black and white fur. Leafpaw saw him exchange a word or two with One Whisker, who was keeping vigil beside his dying leader. Then he settled down with his flank touching Tall Star's, letting the old cat know that he would not be alone as he began his long, dark journey. Okay, side note, sidebar. One Whisker and Tall Star are like totally undercover mates, like in my opinion. I feel like they just are, you know, for sure. Like literally One Whisker is always with Tall Star. Always. Oh, no? That's incorrect? What do you mean? Okay. I do know that Tall Star does have a second, or his first mate, his first mate who was actually, you guys don't know this, but Tall Star actually does have a boyfriend who is a kitty pet. And he lived with him for quite a while. This is Tall Star's lore. You only find this out in a side sequel book. But basically, in Tall Star's lore, that none of us see unless we actually read that book, he breaks his leg, I think. He breaks his leg. There's this cat, and the cat, I forget his name. What's his name? How many books are there? Oh, that's a big question. That's a very big question. I know there's over 90. Over 90 books. Jake, yes. Over 90 if you count like all the sequels and maybe the manga. I'm not sure. It might not be counting the manga, but there is like 90 at least. So the mangoes, the mangoes. There are mangas. I think they call them mangas too. Yes, Jake. So he breaks his leg. Tallstar breaks his leg. This is when he was a warrior. So he broke his leg. He's a warrior. He leaves, or Jake finds him. He lives with Jake in his home. Right? Then his leg heals. He leaves. Jake comes with him. They hang out together. Like they kind of like live together a bit, but Jake ultimately decides that this isn't the life for him, and Tallstar, a warrior at the time, should follow his destiny to become, the leader of his clan. And then Jake leaves, and Tallstar, becomes Tallstar and never takes on a mate ever again. Like, he never takes on a mate. And so that's why it's highly believed that Jake was technically his mate, and he was very, very dedicated to him and never took someone else. You have to add on a little longer. I don't know what you mean for that one. There's also a rumor. I don't know much about Tallstar except for the Jake lore. And then there's also a rumor that Jake is actually Firestar's dad. And the reason why Tallstar is really lenient to Firestar, especially when he was learning, was because he recognized he was Jake's son. And so technically Tallstar is like his stepdad, probably, in my head. He is. So even though technically like One Whisker and Tallstar aren't, like a thing, because you want to say he's like, oh yeah, he's like really dedicated to Jake, they're mates forever, whatever, etc., etc. I think One Whisker has a little bit of a crush on him, like maybe they're not mates, but One Whisker definitely has something going on, It said that Jake visits Tallstars in StarClan. Aww, that's so sweet. Tallstar is a DILF, for real. Fen, did you see the video that I linked once upon a time? It was like, let me look it up. YouTube. It made me cry. It was like StarClan's Chosen. Yeah, StarClan's Chosen. Did you watch that? StarClan's Chosen? Yeah, that's what I mean. Stop, I want to cry, show me. Nice. It's so good. It has all... I mean, like, even if you haven't seen it, or even if you have seen it, you should watch it again. It has... Oh, yes! I want a coffee! I replied to that too late, I think. Sad. Here, I'll just link it into the chat so you guys can see. Don't read the comments. It's so stunning. It's so beautiful. It's like one of the coolest, like, honestly, I've cried watching it more than once. More than once. It shows all of the past, like the main leaders' pasts. Are the comments bad, cringy, or sad? It's spoilery. So if you haven't read Warrior Cats, don't read the spoilers. I mean, don't read the comments because it's spoilery. If you're just watching it without any context, you won't be able to recognize the cats or the stories. So it's just a cool thing to watch, you know? But if you read the comments, you'll find out what they mean, and then you'll know what happens. So if you know what happens, then there's no point. You can read them, right? But if you don't know what happens, don't read them. But yeah, it follows all the main. It follows all the main leaders: Blue Star, Crooked Star, Tall Star, and not I think Yellowfang instead. Yellowfang instead of Black Star? Or maybe it was Black Star, I don't know. Yellowfang and Black Star. And then it follows the next generation: Leopard Star, Fire Star, Black Star, and quote unquote, we don't know yet, mystery person. But it's really pretty, really cute, really stunning. You have to watch it multiple times because so much is happening on the screen. Like, I had to watch it only focusing on one side of the screen, and then watch it again focusing only on the second half of the screen. And then if you read the comments, they point out all the very, very specific details of everything, like why certain cats have certain expressions, what they're like the way that they look, or like little things. Oh yeah, you're gonna sob. Are you watching it now? We'll watch it at the end of no, yes. Maybe we'll watch it. How about we watch it at the end of next book? Because I think that this, not next book, end of next series. Because I think this kind of has, yeah. Ven, you should watch it now, though. I think you should watch it right now, and we'll just watch it all together later. But yeah, you should watch it right now, and then tell me what you think about it as you're watching it. Oh, no. I think the end of the next series would cover a very good amount just to be safe. Yeah. The last 2 seconds kind of gives vague spoilers that even I don't really know about. So that's like series 4, but then again, like, we can pause before the end, or you could just watch it. Beans. You're a bean. Okay. Ven's gonna go watch. While Ven watches, I'm gonna go refill my iced tea, and then Ven can tell me what he thinks about crying. Ven can tell me what he thinks through his tears. I'll be right back, guys, okay? listening to me? I keep on forgetting to mute myself. I have to get into that habit. I used to not mute myself because I thought it was really funny that you guys could hear what I was doing around in the room. But now you guys can hear what I'm doing around the entire condo. Yeah, we were just talking about furniture and how much I love my cat. Itchy, my little chinny. All right, let's continue. Continue. We're still in like the middle of a chapter. I don't know why I've been so I got distracted because Ven came back. Ven, did you watch it? Are you crying? Yeah? Yes, you watched it, or yes, you're crying, or yes, you're watching and crying. Sobbing? Real. Yeah. There's just so much love in the Warrior Cat fandom. So much work and love and care gets put into these animations. Real, I do. Blah. Okay. They have things I don't understand and some cats I don't recognize. Mostly at the end. And then there is some like stuff, right? Because I just don't know some of the past of some cats. Because it's based off of their sequels and stuff. But yeah. And then when you read the comments, Van, you'll find the context for some things that maybe you didn't recognize just off first glance. Like there's like some Wind Clan stuff with Tiger Star, and when you watch it, it's like heartbreaking. I think I cried for that specific part after I rewatched it, and after I read the comics, I cried at it. Once I knew the context. All right, back to reading. Mothwing turned her head to give Leafpaw's ear a quick lick. Where shall we go first? Cinderpelt stood up stiffly, favoring the leg she had injured long ago on the thunder path. If we go that way, she began, gesturing with her tail, we'll end up in the two-leg horse place. I think we should head the opposite way, closer to the lake. Firestar says it's boggy there, Leafpaw reminded her. There's all sorts of good stuff growing in bogs, meowed Mothwing. She gave Leafpaw a gentle flick around the ear with her tail. If you're a River Clan cat, you wouldn't mind getting your paws wet. And I wouldn't mind catching a frog or a toad to eat, mewed Little Cloud. When the other cats glanced at him in surprise, he added defensively, They don't taste that bad. There were always plenty in Shadow Clan's territory, even when the rest of the prey was scarce. As they drew nearer to the lake, the tough moorland grass gave way to sedge and moss. The ground was spongy and water oozed up around Leafpaw's paws at every step. My model's a little weird. I need to adjust this. There we go. I hope it's not all like this, she muttered to herself, pausing to shake droplets of water from each paw. Looking ahead, she saw that although this stretch of marshland reached right down to the lake, trees were growing on the bank further around, and in the distance a wooden tongue of land stretched out into the water. That might be a good place for a camp, she thought. She broke into a run to catch up with the others and found them standing beside a large clump of horsetail. Further away were more clumps of big, healthy plants. Leafpaw's spirit rose. This is excellent, Cinderpelt meowed. It never grew as well as this in our old territory. We'll collect some on our way back. Leafpaw, what's it used for? Leafpaw wasn't sure she liked being questioned in front of the other medicine cats, as if she had barely started her training, but at least she knew the answer. Infected wounds, she answered promptly. That's right, meowed Little Cloud, and we're going to need it. The cats have picked up all kinds of scratches and scrapes on the journey. Cinderpelt nodded. We must remember where to find it. She set off again, and the other cats followed. Leafpaw was pleased when she was the first to spot a clump of watermint, one of the best cures for bellyache. But we're never gonna find Barkface's juniper berries down here, Mothwing pointed out, leaping over a tiny stream. It's much too wet. Why don't you and Leafpaw head away from the shore? Cinderpelt suggested. I can see bushes over there. Some of them might be juniper. Sure. Mothwing swerved away from the water, headed towards the ridge they had crossed the previous night. Leafpaw followed close behind, relieved to feel drier, harder ground under her paws. When they reached the higher ground, they pushed their way into a sheltered thicket of trees. Leafpaw quickly recognized the spiky dark leaves and purple berries of juniper bushes among the undergrowth. Just what we need, she mewed happily, beginning to bite off some of the stems. When they had collected as much juniper as they could carry, they turned back towards the lake. Emerging from the trees, Leafpaw spotted the tiny, indistinct figures of Cinderpelt and Little Cloud in the distance, following the water's edge. From up here, she realized that what she had thought was a wooded spur of land stretching out into the lake was actually an island, separated from the shore by a narrow channel of water. Look, she meowed to Mothwing, there's an island in the lake. The young medicine cat's eyes shone. That would make a great place for a gathering, she exclaimed. It's big enough for all the clans, and nothing would disturb us there. Let's go down and tell the others. Snatching up her collection of juniper stems, she bounded off towards Cinderpelt and Little Cloud. Leafpaw picked up her own stems and followed more slowly. Mothwing hadn't given her the chance to point out that only River Clan cats felt confident about swimming, and none of the other clans would be able to reach the island. It was a pity, because Mothwing was right. The island would be a perfect place for all the clans to meet, safe from predators and two-legs. When she reached the others, Mothwing was excitedly telling them about the island. All four cats padded down to the edge of the lake to have a closer look. The ground was drier here, falling away into a rocky shore with a few tough thorns rooted in cracks. It looks safe enough, meowed Cinderpelt, but how would we get there? Do you fancy telling the elders that they have to swim every time they want to go to a gathering? Little Cloud gave a snort of amusement, and Mothwing looked wounded. Maybe it's shallow enough to wade, Leafpaw suggested diplomatically, though she wasn't keen on finding out. I could swim over there and have a look, Mothwing offered. Cinderpelt nodded. If you wanna. Mothwing didn't need any more encouragement to launch herself down the rocks towards the water. Be careful, Leafpaw called after her. Her friend waved her tail in acknowledgement before wading out into the lake. Soon the water reached her belly fur and she had to swim, pushing through the water with strong, confident strokes. So it wasn't possible to wade all the way to the island, Leafpaw thought. She narrowed her eyes against the sunlight reflected in the water as she tracked the small dark head bobbing through the waves. Behind her, Little Cloud meowed, Why don't we hunt while we're waiting? I'm so hungry I could eat a badger. His words made Leafpaw conscious of her own grumbling belly, but she did not move until she had seen Mothwing reach the shore of the island. She pulled herself out of the water and waved her tail cheerfully at Leafpaw before vanishing among the bushes. Leafpaw turned away just in time to see Little Cloud pounce on a vole and crouch down to devour it in swift bites. She couldn't help feeling relieved that he hadn't found a frog or toad after all, in case he had offered her some. It would have been rude to say no, but Leafpaw didn't think she was quite hungry enough to eat something that looked so tough and unappetizing. A little way off, Cinderpelt was stalking something in the long grass that grew at the foot of the rocks. A heartbeat later, she made her kill and beckoned to Leafpaw with her tail. Come on, Mothwing will be fine. There's plenty of prey over there. Leafpaw cast another glance back to the island, but there was no sign of the River Clan medicine cat, and nothing Leafpaw could do to help her. Padding softly up to the nearest tumble of rocks, she heard the scuffling of a tiny creature and froze. A grass stem twitched aside to reveal another vole scrabbling along the fallen seeds underneath. Leafpaw crept forward, hardly lifting her paws from the rough ground. Once she was in range, she leaped and dispatched her prey with one swift bite to the neck. Leafpaw couldn't remember when she had last seen such a plump vole. The prey that remained in the forest after the two-legs started to tear it apart had been scrawny and terrified, and opportunities for hunting on the journey had been limited. She was just finishing the last satisfying bite when Little Cloud said, Mothwing's coming back. Leafpaw swallowed her mouthful and dashed down to the water's edge. Mothwing was swimming strongly towards the shore, and soon she waded out to stand on dry ground and shake the water from her pelt. Well, Cinderpelt demanded, what did you find? Mothwing let out a gusty sigh. It's perfect! Trees and bushes grow all along the edge, but in the middle there's an open stretch of grass. There'll be room for all the clans to gather there. Little Cloud shook his head. River Clan, maybe, but you'd never get the other 3 clans to join you. His tone was worried as he added, some cats with more courage than sense would drown if they tried. And right in the middle of the open space, Mothwing went on enthusiastically, as if Little Cloud hadn't spoken, there's a huge oak tree, as big as the oaks at 4 Trees, but it has low-growing branches so the leaders could climb up there and address the clans. Her blue eyes shone. I wish we could use it. Well, we can't, Cinderpelt said regretfully. Although you're right, Mothwing, it sounds ideal. Thanks for checking it out. There's prey too! Mothwing swiped her tongue over her jaws. Leafpaw wanted to ask Mothwing if she had noticed anything unusual about the island, like a strange-shaped rock or a twisted tree, anything that would suggest the presence of StarClan. Perhaps the island wasn't meant for gatherings, but there might be a new moonstone there. But once it was clear that the other medicine cats wouldn't agree that the island could be used for gatherings, Mothwing had turned away. She was padding up the beach with her tail drooping, tired out from her swim. Leafpaw decided she would ask her another time about the possibility of a moonstone on the island. The rest of the medicine cats began to make their way back to the temporary camp as well. Leafpaw followed last of all, with a regretful glance over her shoulder at the island. The clans needed a place to gather with a new moonstone as much as they needed safe, sheltered camps with plenty of prey. The gathering place in the moonstone would be the home of the 5th clan and that had been forced to leave the forest, StarClan. Leafpaw shivered, even though Reed sheltered her from the cold breeze coming off the lake. Unless they found these places quickly, the clan's future in their new territory was filled with shadows of doubt. Chapter 3. Chapter 3 only! Chapter 2 was so much shorter than Chapter 1. Also, hi, John! What page? We're on page 66 right now. Six pages versus all the rest. Oh. Thank you for the cheekbone! Hi, Jaggle! You're petting my eyeball as well. Thanks! Is it pasta day or something? My search bar has pasta. It is World Pasta Day. Hello! How are you? I hope you're well and wonderful. Chapter 3. Mistyfoot led the patrol across the marshy shore at a steady trot. Brambleclaw breathed deeply, tasting the prey-scent air and basking in the warmth of the pale winter sun on his fur. His paws... Ooh, lucky! His paws itched to bound ahead, but he forced himself to keep the pace Mistyfoot had set, knowing that they had a long way to go. This is no good, Squirrelflight grumbled as she slipped into yet another boggy hollow. She stopped and flicked water from her hind paw with a disgusted expression on her face. We'll all end up with webbed feet if we live here. It might not be so bad for RiverClan, Mistyfoot replied, but there won't be much prey on ground like this, so it won't be much use. We don't have to use all the territory around the lake, Tawnypelt pointed out. There's plenty of space, so it doesn't matter if no cat wants this bit. As long as there's something better up ahead, Crowfeather added. Brambleclaw paused to scan the land around them. On one side of the land rose steeply to an ridge of hills, the two-leg fence that the horses were behind them now. And beyond that, the grassland sloped up until it vanished beneath a thick growth of gorse and other bushes. Ahead, the swampy ground stretched along the lake shore. In the distance, Brambleclaw could see a wooded spur of ground jutting out into the lake, and more trees right ahead. It looks like we'll be out of the marshes soon, he meowed. Can't we climb the hill, Brambleclaw? Squirrelflight asked. Please, I'm sick of wet feet. There'll be prey up there, too, Tawnypelt mewed longingly. What do you say, Brambleclaw? We need a hunt. We're supposed to be patrolling the lake, Brambleclaw replied. And the territory around it, Crowfeather reminded him. I suppose we could make a few forays away from the lake, Brambleclaw meowed thoughtfully. We won't learn much if we stick to the shore the whole time. Let's start by heading up to the ridge. We'll hunt on the way and... A quiet cough interrupted him, and Brambleclaw felt his fur prickle as he met Mistyfoot's level stare. Sorry, Mistyfoot, he stammered. I mean, if that's okay with you. Amusement glimmered in the RiverClan deputy's eyes. Look, Brambleclaw, maybe it's best if you lead. These cats are obviously used to taking orders from you. I wouldn't say that. Brambleclaw felt even more embarrassed. We discussed things, mostly when we were on our journey. He means we argued, Tawny Pelt meowed dryly. At least some of us argued. She gave a hard look at Squirrelflight and Crowfeather. What? Us? Squirrelflight's eyes opened wide and her tail curled up. Never! Stifling a roar of laughter, Brambleclaw led the way up the slope to the drier ground. He thanked StarClan that Mistyfoot understood that they had fallen into a habit of organizing themselves on their journey, without the typical clan hierarchy of leaders and deputies and senior warriors. It felt good to be traveling with his friends again, though he felt Storm for his absence like a thorn pricking his flank. He wondered what it would be like when the clans separated and he lost his easy friendship with Crowfeather and Tawny Pelt. Would the empty place inside him go on not growing forever? There was prey among the bushes further up the slope, and it did not take long for all 5 cats to hunt successfully and settle down for a good meal. Squirrelflight murmured, laying on her side and splaying out her paws in a luxurious stretch. That was the tastiest mouse I've ever eaten. Now I could do with a good long sleep. Oh, no you don't. Brambleclaw prodded her with his paw. We've got a long way to go, and we need to get as far around the lake as we can in daylight. All right, keep your fur on. Squirrelflight scrambled up, her green eyes teasing. You're such a bossy old furball. Don't forget I'm a warrior now. She whisked around him, flicking him with her tail. You don't give me the chance to forget, Brambleclaw retorted, though he couldn't keep the laughter out of his voice. How long had it been, he asked himself, since any of them had had the time or the strength to play? He gathered the others together. Mistyfoot watched him give the orders without saying anything, the expression in her blue eyes impossible to read, and they set off once more, taking a slanting route down to the lake. As he looked back towards the temporary camp, Brambleclaw saw that the spur of land he had spotted earlier was actually an island. 3 tiny fuzzy shapes were standing on the shore looking down at it. There's Leafpaw! Squirrelflight meowed. Brambleclaw didn't ask how she could recognize her sister from so far away. He knew there was some sort of special connection between them, so that each of them had always had a good idea where the other was and how she was feeling. A flicker of jealousy stirred within him, and he pushed it away. They headed down from the ridge towards the point on the lake shore further along from the island. To Brambleclaw's relief, the marshy places and small reed-fringed pools thinned out. Instead, the ground was covered with long grass that felt cool and comfortable under his paws. This is more like it, muttered Crowfeather, when clan cats were the least used to the wet ground, coming from the well-drained sandy moorland above the woods where the other clans had lived. Sunhigh came and went as the 5 cats traveled along the edge of the lake. A stretch of smooth round pebbles ran down to the water, reminding Brambleclaw of the banks of the river of the forest. A little ways from shore, he spotted the spreading ripples where a fish had just risen. Plenty of prey for RiverClan, he pointed out to Mistyfoot. She nodded. Mind you, she meowed. We might need to work out new ways of fishing. We're used to standing on the bank or stepping stones and scooping them out with our paws. What would we do if all the fish went to hide in the middle of the lake? There was an amused snort from Squirrelflight, but Brambleclaw silenced her with a glare. Mistyfoot hadn't been joking. Her clan could starve next to a lake full of prey if they didn't have the right hunting techniques. He narrowed his eyes and stared across the lake to the greenish smudge that might be the sort of trees ThunderClan had lived among before. Surely hunting mice and squirrels would be the same here as it had been in the forest. The pebbles beneath their paws grew larger and more slippery, and they slowed down to pick their way carefully, without getting their feet trapped between the stones. The lake bulged into the land ahead of them, and Brambleclaw stopped to look at the opposite shore. Pine trees surrounded a grassy area at the edge of the water, where a wooden structure stuck out into the lake. It looked a bit like a 2-leg bridge in the old territory, but it didn't seem to lead anywhere. A dock. What's that? Brambleclaw asked, signaling with his tail. Some two-leg thing. Crowfeather was disdainful. I hope that doesn't mean two-legs swimming all over the place, meowed Tawny Pelt. I don't think so, Mistyfoot replied. I can't see any two-legs there now. Maybe they only come in Greenleaf, like they used to in our old territory. Their kids like to play in the water. I always thought two-legs were mouse-brained, Crowfeather sniffed. Squirrelflight was staring across at the bridge thing, her jaws parted to drink in any scent carried by the breeze. I can't smell anything but forest scents and prey, she reported at last. We're too far away to pick out all the scent trails, Brambleclaw meowed. We'll check it out when we get over there. Like Mistyfoot said, there aren't any two-legs around now. He signaled for the patrol to move on again. They walked in silence, as if the two-leg half-bridge had reminded them of their old enemy and made them warier. Before long, Brambleclaw heard another sound above the gentle lapping of waves on the shore, the gurgle of running water. The ground under paw grew wetter, and just ahead he could see a thick line of reeds winding away from the lake. A stream! Mistyfoot exclaimed, bounding forward. The rest of the patrol picked up their pace until they joined her on the bank. Pushing through the reeds, Brambleclaw saw that the stream flowed out of the lake. It was wider than the streams they had crossed previously, too broad to jump across, with deep channels curving around pebbly shallows and small stony islands. The water looked green and cool, shaded by reeds and the occasional tree that grew along the banks. Clumps of brown, dry bracken all around promised more lush vegetation in Greenleaf. Mistyfoot looked around, the tip of her tail twitching. RiverClan would like a place like this. Brambleclaw noticed that she did not make an instant claim to this territory on behalf of her clan, but he saw the longing in her eyes as she surveyed the stream. He agreed it would be a good place for RiverClan, but it wasn't their decision to make. Their duty was to report back to the rest of the cats when they had explored all the land around the lake, and that the leaders would decide how to divide it up. Hey! Squirrelflight mewed. I just saw a fish! A heartbeat later, Brambleclaw spotted one too, a silver fish that sent ripples spiraling out as it touched the surface of the water. Perfect! Mewed Mistyfoot. Shall I catch some for us? We know how to catch our own, you know. Tawny Pelt spoke politely, but with an edge to her voice. Mistyfoot gave her a curious look. Where'd you learn how to do that? On our journey, Crowfeather meowed abruptly. Feathertail taught us. He turned away and stalked a few paces downstream. He sat close to the water, staring into the depths with one paw raised, ready to strike. Brambleclaw's heart ached for him. None of them would ever forget the brave and gentle RiverClan cat who had done so much to help Crowfeather feel at ease in the group, and in the end had given her life to save him from Sharptooth. Brambleclaw wondered whether Crowfeather's pain would ever be healed. Sometimes he seemed as prickly and self-contained as he had been in the start of the journey, before he had learned to trust his companions, and before he had fallen in love with Feathertail. Mistyfoot gave a sympathetic murmur. Brambleclaw saw grief in her eyes, too, and remembered that she had been Feathertail's mentor. But the RiverClan deputy didn't attempt to go over to the WindClan warrior and comfort him. Perhaps she knew he wouldn't welcome any cat intruding on his sad memories. Instead, she crouched down where she was to wait for fish. Tawny Pelt and Squirrelflight joined her, but Brambleclaw stayed close to the reeds, all his senses alert for danger. They still didn't know what this new territory might conceal, and 4 cats intent on hunting would make it easy prey for a hungry fox. There was no scent of predators or two-legs, and by the time his friends had hooked several fish out of the stream, there had been no sounds to disturb them. Aren't you hungry, Brambleclaw? Squirrelflight asked, patting up to him and settling down the plump silver fish she carried in her jaws. Or have you forgotten how to fish? I was keeping watch, he protested. He broke off when he spotted the gleam in her green eyes. Mouse brain, she purred, patting the fish towards him with one forepaw. I know exactly what you were doing, and I caught enough for both of us. Come and share. Tawny Pelt shot Brambleclaw a look from narrowed eyes as he sat down beside Squirrelflight. You seem pretty close, she remarked quietly. No need to ask StarClan where your future holds. Brambleclaw squirmed in embarrassment, uncomfortable at the thought of other cats gossiping about who he chose to spend time with. Then he relaxed. He had no reason to be secretive about his feelings for Squirrelflight, especially with his own sister. And that makes one less thing for StarClan to worry about, he retorted lightly. When the meal was over, he stood up, swiping his tongue around his jaws. Where now? He asked. Back to the lake, or shall we look downstream? I'd like to explore downstream, meowed Mistyfoot. We could see if there are any good places for camp. Brambleclaw nodded, and the cats padded in single file along the bank of the stream, away from the lake. Brambleclaw let Mistyfoot take the lead because she had the best idea of what she'd be looking out for to make a good RiverClan camp. As far as he could see, there was plenty of places where her clanmates would feel at home. Reed beds, clumps of bramble thickets for fresh kill that wasn't fish, with the gurgling of the stream always in their ears. Before very long, they came to a small trickle of water that fell down a slope thickly covered with ferns and moss to join the main stream. The land between the two streams was sheltered by clumps of hazel and brambles. That's perfect! Mistyfoot's eyes shone. She crossed the main stream, leaping from one pebbly island to the next, then paused as if she had almost forgotten that they needed to watch out for danger. She lifted her head to taste the air before vanishing into the undergrowth. Looks as if RiverClan are settled, Tawnypelt commented. Nothing is settled, Crowfeather reminded her sharply. It's for the leaders to decide how to divide the land. Where am I? Well, don't tell me WindClan want to live by a stream, because I won't believe you, Squirrelflight retorted. Crowfeather's right, but there's no need to argue. Brambleclaw tried to sound neutral, but he couldn't help feeling a twinge of envy. This place was perfect for RiverClan, but it would suit ThunderClan very well too. Okay, so they had never hunted for fish back in the forest, but they could learn, and there were enough trees growing here to provide them with fur-clad prey as well. Brambleclaw wasn't going to say anything now because it might upset Mistyfoot, but no final decisions could be made before they had seen everything. With any luck, we'll find somewhere right for all of us, he meowed firmly. Mistyfoot soon came back, her tail in the air and her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. I've seen enough for now, she mewed. We could definitely make a camp here. Let's keep going and see if we can find somewhere for your clans too. Trying not to feel irritated by the trace of smugness in her tone, as if she was doing them a big favor by accompanying them when RiverClan seemed to have found their perfect home, Brambleclaw led the way to join her on the other side of the main stream. They headed back towards the lake, past the place where they had stopped to fish, and emerged from the trees to an open space stretching down to the shore. Not far ahead was the two-leg half-bridge, and now that they were closer, Brambleclaw caught a faint but familiar tang in the air. There's a thunderpath nearby, he hissed. The hair on his shoulders lifted, and his blood turned to ice as he remembered the two-legged monsters gouging through the forest, ripping the trees out of the ground and leaving an unrecognizable landscape of mud and ruts. Would two-legs and their monsters drive them away from this place too? Beside him, Squirrelflight stood with her paws braced against the ground, and her fur fluffed up, as if she too was watching their home being destroyed all over again. I haven't heard any monsters, Mistyfoot meowed calmly. Let's go and look. She took a pace forward, glancing back when she realized that none of the other cats had followed. Look, she went on. We lived near the old thunderpaths for seasons and seasons, and they never did any cat any harm, so long as we were careful. This one is quieter already. We haven't heard a single monster today. There's no need to lose your fur over it. Now come on. Brambleclaw gave himself a shake. He felt a bit cross that he had frozen at the first hint of danger, leaving Mistyfoot to take charge of the patrol. He padded forward wearily with the others bunched around him. The scent of the thunderpath strengthened, and soon he spotted the hard, black surface winding through the grass like a flattened snake. It was much narrower than the old thunderpath, and as Mistyfoot had pointed out, there was no monsters charging back and forth on it. What's it for? Crowfeather wondered, walking right up to the edge. Look, it just goes down to the lake and stops. Brambleclaw realized he was right. The thunderpath ended beside the lake in a wide area covered with the same hard black stuff. At one side was a small two-leg nest made of wood. The two-leg scent is faint and stale, Tawnypelt remarked. I'd guess they haven't been here for moons. Look what I found! Brambleclaw spun around and froze when he saw that Squirrelflight had ventured right onto the half-bridge and was gazing down into the water. Be careful, he called, bounding over to her. His paws made soft thudding sounds on the planks of wood, and every few paces one of them rattled ominously. He tried not to think of what it would feel like to plunge through into the icy gray water. Look! Squirrelflight leaned over the edge and pricked her ears. Following where she pointed, Brambleclaw saw another two-legged object floating on the water. It looked like an upturned leaf, but it was much bigger and made of wood. It was partially hidden by the bridge, so they hadn't seen it from the shore. What is it? Two Legs call it a boat, Mistyfoot told them, padding up. Also, hi, Orbital Saucer! I'll chat more when I get to the end of the chapter, okay? Thank you for dropping by! Two Legs call it a boat, Mistyfoot told them, padding up. Her fur lay flat on her shoulders, and she obviously wasn't bothered by the rattling half-bridge. They used to bring them onto our river sometimes. Did you never see one? Sometimes they use them for fishing. Brambleclaw tried to picture a two-leg crouching in this boat, waiting to hook out a fish with its big, clumsy paws. He found it hard to believe they'd be quick enough to catch anything, but if Mistyfoot said so, it must be true. I think this must be a place where the two legs come to Greenleaf. Like the river, Mistyfoot went on. That means we don't have to worry about them now. We'll need to worry about them in Greenleaf, though, Squirrelflight meowed. Mistyfoot shrugged. We'll think about that when the time comes. There'll be thicker growth everywhere by then. We can keep out of the two legs' way just as we did before. She lifted her head to look squarely at Brambleclaw and Squirrelflight, and her gaze took in Crowfeather and Tawnypelt, who were waiting anxiously where the half-bridge joined with the shore. Of course, there will be other dangers in our new home, wherever we end up, she meowed, but we mustn't forget that we had enemies back in the forest, even before the two legs brought their monsters. If StarClan brought us here, it was not because there were no dangers here at all, but because we could learn to live among them, just as we did before. Squirrelflight nutted, chastened, but Brambleclaw curled his lip. He didn't like the way Mistyfoot was treating them all like anxious apprentices. She had no idea of the dangers they had faced on the first journey to Sundrown Place. More Thunderpats than she had crossed in her entire lifetime. As well as dogs, hostile kitty pets, two legs who wanted to trap them, hungry foxes. Are you going to stay here forever? Squirrelflight had padded past him and was looking over her shoulder with her tail raised questioningly. Mistyfoot was already back on the shore with the others. No, I'm coming, Brambleclaw muttered. He followed Squirrelflight off the half-bridge and tried not to feel mutinous when Mistyfoot led the way out of the clearing, away from the Thunderpath. She's the deputy of our clan, Squirrelflight murmured, dropping back to walk close beside him. You can't blame her for having more experience than us. Brambleclaw was about to reply fiercely that their journey to the Sundrown Place made them more experienced than any other forest cat, when he saw that Squirrelflight was looking at him with sympathy in her green eyes. It was fair to take out his temper on her. If he was honest with himself, he was mostly feeling embarrassed because he had frozen with fear at the sight of the Thunderpath, afraid that what had driven them out of the forest was going to happen all over again. He stretched his head forward to lick Squirrelflight's ear. I know, he meowed, and everything she says is true. Come on, let's not get left behind. They broke into a run, and Brambleclaw felt a jolt of relief as they left the two-leg place in the half-bridge behind and headed into the next part of the territory. They were approaching the dark green smudge that he had seen across the lake from their temporary camp. As he had guessed, it was a pine wood, like the part of the forest in ThunderClan's old territory that had surrounded Tree Cut Place. He sniffed the air, but there was no sign of the bitter stench left by tree-cutting monsters, and the ground was smooth and flat, unscarred by the ruts that monsters left behind. The sun had started to go down, and a red light shone through the trees, casting dark shadows across their path. Tawnypelt's tortoiseshell fur smoldered as the light glanced across her shoulders, and her eyes gleamed. Brambleclaw realized that it wasn't just the woods around Tree Cut Place that were like this. ShadowClan's old territory had also had lots of pine trees, giving way to sticky, marshy ground where only a few stunted trees grew. Do you think ShadowClan would like to settle here? He asked his sister. Maybe. Tawnypelt's tail twitched, but back in the forest there were more trees with lower branches. We'd have trouble climbing most of these. Brambleclaw saw that she was right. The pines around them grew straight up, with smooth, slippery trunks, and the lowest branches began well above a cat's head. An energetic warrior could claw his way up the trunk, but elders or queens and their kits would have trouble. If foxes or badgers attacked, the weakest cats in the clan would find it hard to escape. But you won't camp in the trees, Crowfeather meowed. If you make this your territory, you'll need somewhere easy to defend your camp. Tawnypelt nodded and looked around. The old ShadowClan camp had been in the shelter of a clump of bramble bushes, dense enough to keep the cats hidden and prickly enough to discourage even the most curious foxes. Can't see anywhere here, she commented. The ground sloped gently upward from the lake, which was just visible through the trees as a glimmer of silver. As far as Brambleclaw could see, the forest floor was smooth and clear, with little undergrowth where prey might be found. When he tasted the air, the strongest scent except for their own was a squirrel, but a clan could not survive by waiting for squirrels to come down from trees. A pang of sympathy for his sisters tore through him like a claw. In the forest they had left, ShadowClan's territory had been dreary and unwelcoming, partly bog, partly shrubby forest with few tall trees. He had always wondered if the darkness in the hearts of some of the ShadowClan cats came from their gloomy surroundings. This wasn't quite as foreboding, but it still wasn't right for cats. It would be different. It might be different further on, he mewed encouragingly. Let's head away from the lake. Tawny Pelt took the lead as they moved wearily up the slope. The thick covering of brittle pine needles muffled their paw steps. Everything was so quiet that their meows sounded too loud, and gradually every cat fell silent. Brambleclaw nearly jumped out of his fur when a bird shot up with a loud alarm call. Squirrelflight sniffed at a clump of yellowish fungi and drew back with her lip curled in disgust. I wouldn't want to live here, she muttered to Brambleclaw. Do you think there's any point in going further? It's up to Tawny Pelt, he replied. This is more like ShadowClan territory than anything we've seen before. They padded on, but before they had gone many more paw steps, Mistyfoot stopped. This is no good, she meowed. We're getting further and further away from the lake, and it's going to get dark soon. I need to find somewhere for a ShadowClan camp, Tawny Pelt insisted stubbornly. But the clan sent us to patrol the whole lake. Mistyfoot's tail twitched. We can't waste time exploring one place more than anywhere else. You've already said that these trees remind you of your old home, so maybe this should be ShadowClan territory. And what do you think I'm going to say when Blackstar to Blackstar about where we'll actually live? Tawny Pelt's voice had grown sharper, and her neck fur began to rise. You needn't think ShadowClan are going to take the worst territory. If there's nowhere to camp, then forget it. Mistyfoot's neck bristled too. Trust ShadowClan to be difficult. That's all right for you, isn't it? RiverClan's got everything sorted out. You were pretty quick to stake a claim when we found the stream. Mistyfoot let out a furious hiss, unsheathing her claws, and Brambleclaw quickly stepped forward to push himself between the quarreling she-cats. Much as he sympathized with Tawny Pelt, it would be a disaster if she got into a fight with the RiverClan deputy. There was no way they could deal with injuries out here, with no medicine cat and no healing herbs. And how would they ever finish their mission if they were quarreling among themselves? Stop! Tawny Pelt, no cat will force ShadowClan to settle in a place they don't want. Huh? Tawny Pelt shot a last glare at Mistyfoot before turning away. I think we should go on a bit further, Brambleclaw mewed to Mistyfoot. We need to find somewhere to spend the night. I know. Mistyfoot still sounded out of temper. I just think we should head back to the lake. But... Brambleclaw broke off. A faint breeze had sprung up, bringing with it an unexpected scent. He tasted the air, just to be sure. More cats! He exclaimed. What? Squirrelflight bounded over. Where? Brambleclaw angled his ears in the direction they had been going. Up ahead! They must be rogues or loners. Crowfeather sounded concerned. Or maybe some other clan has already staked a claim here. The suggestion worried Brambleclaw for a moment. Then he comforted himself with the memory of stars shining in the lake. If StarClan had brought them here, then there could be no other warrior ancestors watching over this territory. StarClan had been silent and invisible when the clans traveled through the mountains, where the tribe of endless hunting watched over their former home. Maybe they're just passing through, he meowed, but we ought to check it out. I don't think it's important now. Mistyfoot waved her tail as Brambleclaw opened his jaws to protest. All right, but you can tell the leaders why it took us so long to get back. Fine, Brambleclaw agreed. Before heading through the trees in the direction of the scent, soon they came to a low wall of rough gray stone with a two-leg nest beyond it. 2 legs. Tawny Pelt sounded disgusted. Those must be kitty pets we can smell. Squirrelflight rolled her eyes. All this fuss about kitty pets? You stay here, Brambleclaw mewed softly. I'm gonna go take a closer look. What for? Mistyfoot's tail twitched impatiently, but she didn't say anything when Brambleclaw crept forward. With his belly close to the ground, he got as close to the wall as he could before leaping to the top. The sunlight was almost gone by now, and shadows were gathering in the two-leg garden. Nothing stirred. Brambleclaw was about to jump down for a closer look when he heard the sound of claws on the stone beside him, and Squirrelflight's voice exclaimed, "Catman!" "I thought I told you to stay back there," Brambleclaw hissed. Squirrelflight gave him an innocent look. "Did you? Sorry. Anyway, the medicine cats will be interested to hear that we found a supply of catmint." "That was well scented," Brambleclaw admitted grudgingly. "Now, if you must come, stay with me, and for StarClan's sake, keep quiet." He dropped into the garden behind the clump of whiskery two-leg plants. Squirrelflight landed softly beside him, and together they crept closer to the two-leg nest. The scent of kitty pets was very strong. 2 of them, Brambleclaw thought. He was about to suggest going back when the light flashed on in the nest, and he found himself blinking in yellow glow. Instinctively, he slid to one side, back into the shadows, and watched as a two-leg appeared and began to pull pelts across to hide the light. "Squirrelflight," he whispered, "where are you? Let's get out of here." Squirrelflight's voice came from the other side of the patch of light. Brambleclaw, you might want to rethink that." At first, Brambleclaw couldn't see her in the fast-gathering darkness. Then, as the two-leg hid the last of the light, he spotted her, close to the wall of the nest. Her back was arched and her fur fluffed out so she looked almost twice her size. 2 angry kitty pets faced her, trapping her against the wall. Brambleclaw stared in disbelief. In spite of their hostile encounter with a kitty pet at the start of their journey, he still expected most kitty pets to be soft and small, no danger to a trained warrior. But these 2 looked lean and dangerous, their muscles sharply etched beneath sleek pelts. The nearest to him, a big black and white Tom, had one ear that was torn jaggedly, proving he was no stranger to fights. In the moment that Brambleclaw stood frozen, the Tom lashed out at Squirrelflight. She shrank back with a furious hiss. "Leave me alone, kitty pet!" With a yowl of rage, Brambleclaw launched himself across the garden, straight at the black and white kitty pet. Barreling into him, he swept the Tom off his paws and tried to pin him down. The tomcat withered under him, clawing at his face and pummeling his belly with his hind legs. Brambleclaw heard Squirrelflight let out a screech and caught a glimpse of her rolling over, locked together with the other kitty pet, a light brown tabby. Fear crashed over him like an icy wave. The journey had left them both thin and tired, and they were no match for strong, well-fed, battle-hungry cats. He fought to sink his teeth into the kitty pet's throat, but the black and white Tom heaved his shoulders and flipped Brambleclaw over before he could close his jaw on the fur or flesh. Brambleclaw felt his weight land on top of him and saw sharp white teeth snapping at his ear. He felt claws rake over his side and battered vainly at his opponent's belly with his hind paws. Suddenly, the kitty pet's weight vanished. Brambleclaw scrambled up, panting, to see Mistyfoot swipe her claws down the black and white Tom's shoulder. She sprang out of reach before he had the chance to jump around and face her. While he was still unbalanced, she leapt back onto his back and sank her teeth into the scruff of his neck. Just beyond, the tabby broke away from Squirrelflight and raced around the side of the nest, yowling. Brambleclaw saw Tawnypelt and Crowfeather pelting across the garden, but before they reached the fight, the doors of the nest was flung open. A two-leg stood in the doorway, letting out a loud screech. It flung something that skimmed over Brambleclaw's head and landed with a crash in the bushes. The noise distracted Mistyfoot, and the black and white Tom wrenched himself from her paws and fled into the nest. The two-leg advanced into the garden, casting a long, menacing shadow into the light shed through the doorway. "Run!" hissed Mistyfoot. Making sure that Squirrelflight was on her paws, Brambleclaw dashed for the wall. Something else slammed into the ground behind him, and there was another yowl from the two-leg. Then he was leaping up, claws scrabbling on the rough stone, and landed hard on the other side. The others kept pace with him as he fled for the trees, and they didn't stop until the two-leg nest was out of sight. "Wow!" panted Mistyfoot. "Maybe listen to me next time, Brambleclaw, and think about just how far we need to explore." Brambleclaw bowed his head, shame scorching him from ears to tail tip. He had been stupid to go so close to the nest. He had been showing off, trying to prove what a good leader he could be. "Sorry, Mistyfoot," he mumbled. "You should be. You could have been badly injured, or trapped by two legs." The RiverClan's deputy's voice was a tart. Glancing around, she added, "Do you have any idea where we are now?" Brambleclaw realized that they hadn't fled from the nest in the same direction they had come. Tall pines stood all around them, with not a hint of where the lake might be. It was almost completely dark. "No, I thought not." Mistyfoot went on caustically. Lost in strange woods, and it's getting dark. We better look for somewhere to spend the night and hope we can find our way back to the lake in the morning. This time she took the lead, stalking through the trees with her tail held high. Tawnypelt and Crowfeather followed. Tawnypelt gave her brother a sympathetic glance and murmured, "I know you were trying to help." Brambleclaw shrugged. He couldn't defend his actions. It was only thanks to Mistyfoot that he had escaped from the kitty pets with his fur intact. He kept to the rear of the group, his tail drooping, and hardly looked up when Squirrelpaw dropped back to give him an affectionate nuzzle. "Cheer up," she mewed. "It's not that bad. We found out something the ShadowClan will need to be warned about if they decide to settle here." "Blackstar won't want these 2 kitty pets in his territory," Brambleclaw muttered. "Oh, I don't know." Squirrelflight's eyes glimmered. She glanced at the others to make sure that Tawnypelt was out of earshot before adding, "They'd make pretty good recruits for ShadowClan if you ask me." Brambleclaw let out a purr of amusement. "Come on, we don't want to get left behind." They bounded after the others, their pelts brushing as they swerved through the close-growing trees. The ground started to slope more steeply, with rocks jutting out here and there. Brambleclaw slowed down after snagging his claws painfully on a lump of stone. Tussocks of grass and small bushes were rooted in the gaps between the rocks, and the scent of prey grew stronger. Tawnypelt reached the top first. Halting on flattened boulder, she called back, "Come and see this!" Mistyfoot and Crowfeather sprang up beside her, with Brambleclaw and Squirrelflight just behind. Even though the last of the sun had gone, the shadows were gathering. Brambleclaw could make out the wide, shallow dip in the ground, half hidden under dense brambles. The half-moon, shining through thin cloud, cast watery beams of light onto the trees that surrounded the hollow, their gnarled branches almost sweeping the ground. Squirrelflight rasped her tongue over Tawnypelt's ear. "A camp for ShadowClan," she whispered. "We never have found it if Brambleclaw hadn't gone looking for those kitty pets." Mistyfoot shot her a glance that was half annoyed, half amused. "Maybe it would make a good camp." Tawnypelt was trying to sound calm, though Brambleclaw could tell that she was excited. "But that will be for Blackstar to decide if ShadowClan moves into this territory." "At least it's possible," meowed Mistyfoot. "You might find even better places once you've had the chance to explore properly." "But it's too late to go any further tonight," Crowfeather pointed out. "You're right," Squirrelflight agreed. "My paws are dropping off. Where are we going to sleep?" Brambleclaw thought it would be a good idea to shelter under the bushes in the hollow, but there was water at the bottom of the slope they had just climbed, and he was thirsty. He picked his way carefully down again, and the others followed. As Mistyfoot crouched beside him to lap at the tiny pool, she asked, "Do you want to hunt, or shall we leave it till the morning?" "Morning," Squirrelflight replied, though the question hadn't been addressed to her. She gave a huge yawn. "I'm so tired I couldn't catch a mouse if it sat on my paws. Besides, we've eaten enough today to feed the whole clan." Brambleclaw realized she was right. Back in the forest, there had been many days when a clan hadn't found as much fresh kill as they had caught since they left on their patrol. When all the cats had taken their turn to drink, they settled down to sleep among the grass at the foot of the slope. Mistyfoot organized sentries, and Crowfeather took first watch. As Brambleclaw curled up comfortably beside Squirrelflight, he could see the WindClan warriors' pricked ears outlined against the darkness of the forest. "It's been a good day," he thought, closing his eyes. "We found possible homes for 2 of the clans. But what about ThunderClan? What if there's nowhere for us?" Chapter 4. Mistyfoot is like that. It's that no. Hi, Stardust. Mistyfoot is like, she's kind, but she's also a little like, I don't know. She is used to being a deputy, right? Like, she's used to telling cats around. She's used to that sort of honor, the respect. She's with a bunch of cats that are like, they know each other, you know? She's lost a lot, yeah. But, well, how it is. Let's see how long this chapter is. Chapter 4. Okay, this is a long chapter. What the heck? Why is this chapter so long? Jesus Christ. Hello? Okay, this chapter ends on page 121. And we're on 92. 92 to 121. That's 30 pages. What the heck? Why? Why is it so long? I mean, yeah. But, like, usually they're not this long. What's wrong with this? How many chapters are in this book? Chapter 21? Weird. You got another 30 pages in ya? I think it might be good to do the next chapter because there's 345 pages in this book, and if we can finish this in 3 weeks like we do most of our books, that would be nice. So I want to at least get to 100, and the fact that it goes well into 100 is pretty good in the long run of things, I think. All right. Take a little sip of water. I said water, but it's iced tea. Chapter 4. Clouds covered the sun the next morning as the patrol set off to find their way back to the lake. Heading in what they thought was the right direction, Brambleclaw stopped short when he smelled scent markers and spotted the walls of the two-legged nest through the trees. Yuck! Scrufflight's lip curled. That's worse than fox dung. These kitty pets must have marked their territory. The patrol skirted the marks warily. To Brambleclaw's relief, there were no signs of the hostile kitty pets. With the nest in view, he could remember which way they had approached in the night before, and it was not long before they had crossed the earlier scent trail. This way, Brambleclaw meowed. A chill wind shook the tops of the pines, and they reached the shore. And as they reached the shore, the cats felt the full force of it. Brambleclaw turned to face it, the cold blast flattening his fur against his sides. He guessed that they had traveled about halfway around the lake, looking back the way they had come. He could see the dark smudge of the island against the background of the pale green hills. The surface of the lake was gray and choppy, under clouds that bulged with rain. Just what we need, Tawnypelt grumbled, tucking her nose into her chest. Waving his tail for the rest to follow him, Brambleclaw retraced his steps into the trees. I think we should stay under cover, he suggested. It's more sheltered here. Just as long as we don't get lost again, Mistyfoot warned. Let's stay where we can see the lake. The others were all happy to get out of the icy wind. They moved off, keeping the lake in sight through the outlining trees, but not venturing out into the open shore. They had not gone far before Crowfeather let out a muffled grunt and streaked off with his tail streaming behind him. Staring after him, Brambleclaw scented squirrel before he spotted the gray-furred creature nibbling at a pine cone at the foot of one of the trees. Its ears flicked up in alarm as Crowfeather raced towards it. Dropping the pine cone, it sprang for the safety of the tree. But Crowfeather was faster. With a mighty leap, he grabbed the squirrel's tail and pulled it back to the ground. He patted back with the limp body dangling from his jaws. Good catch! Scrufflight meowed. Crowfeather nodded as he dropped the fresh kill in front of them. Come on, let's eat. Crouching beside the others to eat his share, Brambleclaw itched with the impatience to get moving again. The leaders expected them home by nightfall to report what they had discovered, and they still had a lot of territory to explore. And 2 clans still needed homes. Let's go, he meowed as soon as they had finished. To his relief, Mistyfoot didn't protest. Just swiped her tongue around her jaws and kept pace with him as he set off through the trees at a steady trot. Brambleclaw's paws tingled with excitement. This could be the day where they find ThunderClan's new home. RiverClan and ShadowClan had already found good places, and he guessed the ridge of hills across the lake would suit WindClan, but deep down, finding somewhere for his clanmates to live and hunt safely was what he wanted most of all. Their home in the forest had suited them so well, in spite of them being close to the Thunderpath and Two-Leg Place. Would they find anywhere nearly as good here? As if he could read his sister's thoughts, as if she could read his thoughts, his sister, Tawnypelt, padded up beside him and touched her muzzle briefly to his side. Worried about something? She mewed. I'm okay, he told her, trying hard to convince himself. Just be happier when we found some territory for ThunderClan. There's a long way to go yet, Tawny Pelt mewed encouragingly. Soon they came to a wide path winding through the trees. The pine needle cover gave way to short grass. Regular dents in it filled with water to form small pools. Horses have been along here, Crowfeather mewed, lapping at one of the puddles. Tawny Pelt tasted the air. Two Legs too, but there's no sign of them now. Mistyfoot was gazing up at a tree close to the edge of the path. That's a two-leg thing, she reported, flicking her tail at something above her head. Brambleclaw looked to where she was pointing. A round shape made of something hard and shiny had been fastened to the tree. It was bright blue, the same glittering color as some of the monsters on the Thunder Path. What do you think it's for? Squirrelflight asked. Maybe it's like a two-leg scent marking, Brambleclaw suggested. This path could be a boundary between two territories. There seemed nothing dangerous about the mark, but all the cats looked around warily as they crossed the path. Brambleclaw reminded himself crossly that he never used to be this scared of two legs, not until they brought their monsters to the forest and shut up all the cats they could catch in small two-leg dens. Now he wondered whether he would ever feel safe around two legs again, and he let out a sigh of relief when they reached the shelter of the trees on the other side. Gradually the pine trees began to thin out. Cold rain began to fall, billowing over the cats as wind rattled the branches above them, sending a prickly shower of pine needles into their heads. I'd give anything for a nice warm den, Squirrelflight grumbled, flicking raindrops from her ears. Heads down, they plodded on until the trees stopped altogether, giving way to a broad, straight-edged grassy clearing. At the edge of the wood, they crossed another two-leg path, narrower than the first, and grass worn away by many feet. By now everything was so wet that no cat could pick up a scent. All Brambleclaw could be sure of was that no two legs were there now. There's another one of those half-bridges, he mewed, pricking his ears towards the wooden structure that jutted out into the lake. Squirrelflight didn't seem keen on venturing onto it when billows of icy rain scudded across the surface of the lake and rattled against the wood. They cautiously crossed the exposed space beyond the trees, crouching down into the short grass brushed their belly fur. For a while there was no sound except for the falling rain and the trees clattering in the wind. They had a clear view of the lake from here, and Brambleclaw realized that they were about to enter the last stretch of trees before the bare ridge of hills. Beyond that was the place where the horses were, and then the copse of trees where all four clans waited to hear about their new homes. If WindClan was going to take the hills, which seemed logical, this was ThunderClan's last chance to find somewhere to live. Brambleclaw's ears twitched as he picked up sound of running water. Could it be a place where his clanmates could make camp, with somewhere to drink close by? Must be another stream, Crowfeather meowed, hearing it too. Beneath their paws, the ground sloped down and the grass gave way to pebbles, which in turn disappeared beneath a broad, fast-flowing stream. Unlike the stream they had found in the place where RiverClan might make their camp, there were no stepping stones or islands to help the cats across. We'll have to wade, Tawny Pelt decided. Doesn't look too deep. She padded down to the edge of the water and dipped in her paw, drawing it out again with a hiss. The water's obviously icy cold. She then shook herself and walked into the water, placing each paw carefully into the slippery pebbles. There were fewer reeds here than in the first stream where they had stopped to fish the day before, and hardly any shrubs or undergrowth. A pang of disappointment bit through Brambleclaw. This would be no place for a camp, especially not with traces of two legs so close by. Watch out when you get to the middle, Mistyfoot called. Sometimes there are hollows you can't see above the water, so it could suddenly get deeper. The water almost reached Tawny Pelt's belly fur by now. She paused and nodded without looking back, then went on more cautiously. Brambleclaw and the others followed. Crowfeather let out a startled meow as he slipped on a loose stone, but he found his balance again after some rather indignified splashing, and managed to keep his head above the surface of the water. Tawny Pelt jumped out and shook herself from nose to tail, scattering drops of water around her. You'll be fine, she called to the others, and didn't have to swim at all. Cold, wet, and with his belly fur clinging uncomfortably to his skin, Brambleclaw wasn't sure that was much of a benefit right now. Beside him, Mistyfoot padded confidently through the water, as if she were on dry land. Brambleclaw noticed her keeping an eye on Squirrelflight, who had the shortest legs of them all, and had to tip back her head to stop the water from lapping at her muzzle. There was another stretch of open grass on the far side of the stream, with more trees beyond. Soaked to his ears by the time he scrambled up the opposite bank, Brambleclaw made a dash for cover, but the branches here had shed their leaves and didn't offer much shelter from the rain. He crouched beneath the tree while he waited for the others to catch up, trying to imagine what it would look like in Greenleaf with thicker grass and ferns and a canopy of leaves rustling above him. Right now the ground was unpleasantly soggy, and he couldn't see any thickets of bramble or hazel like the ones on their old territory. At least these trees were oak and beech, not pines like the forest they had just left. They would provide good shelter for the mice and birds ThunderClan was used to hunting. Brambleclaw's spirits began to lift, and he was still uneasy about all the signs of two-leg activity, the paths, the brightly colored mark on a tree, the half-bridges. He wondered if it was just his nerves telling him there were more signs of two legs here than in their old territory, and shook himself to clear his head. "What do you think?" Mistyfoot prompted, joining him. Before Brambleclaw could reply, Squirrelflight bounded up and began scuffling with one forepaw among the discarded beech shells lying in the grass. "With all these nuts around, there should be plenty of squirrels," she meowed. Mistyfoot narrowed her eyes at Brambleclaw, and he tried not to look as if he were beginning to give up all hope of finding somewhere for ThunderClan to live. "Why don't we rest for a bit?" she suggested. "Find somewhere out of the rain and hope it stops soon?" "Hope catches no prey," Crowfeather commented dryly as he and Tawnypelt came up, licking droplets of water from their ears. "That's a good idea, Mistyfoot," Brambleclaw meowed. "If we can find any shelter," Tawnypelt added. "Let's go further into the woods," Mistyfoot decided. "The wind will be colder blowing off the water." They padded into the trees on a slanting course that led away from the lake. When they could still make out the silver sheen of water behind them, they came to a huge, ancient oak standing among the beech trees. The ground had fallen away around the twisting roots, and there was a faint, stale scent of rabbit, as if this had once been used as a burrow. There was room for all the cats to creep in among the roots, where they were sheltered from the wind, though the rain still trickled in. Brambleclaw huddled close to Squirrelflight and began to lick drops of rain from the fur around her neck and shoulders. "This feels way harder than anything we had to do on the journey," she murmured after a while. "All that way, all that danger we faced getting here, the times we nearly didn't make it, and now we have to decide where the clan's gonna make its new home. Doesn't feel as if StarClan is gonna lead us straight to a nice, safe camp. What if we make the wrong decision?" She had come so close to the heart of his fears that Brambleclaw paused to gaze into her forest green eyes. "I thought it would be easier than this too," he admitted. Squirrelflight peered out of the shelter, blinking raindrops off her eyelashes. "These are the right sorts of trees, but it's so open here compared to the old territory. ThunderClan wouldn't feel safe if there isn't enough cover." "Or if the territory's full of two legs," Brambleclaw pointed out. "Come on." Tawnypelt stopped licking her chest fur and looked up to face him. "There were plenty of two legs black in the forest. It wasn't a problem then, and it won't be a problem now." She's talking sense. But more than anything else, Brambleclaw knew that he wanted to feel safe in his new home. And he didn't feel safe here, not yet. "It'll look better in New Leaf," Mistyfoot meowed encouragingly. "Everything does." Squirrelflight shifted so that she could lick the damp fur at the base of her tail. "We still have to find a camp, though." "I've hardly set paw into the territory yet," Crowfeather pointed out. "I know." Brambleclaw made a determined effort to stop worrying and concentrate on giving Squirrelflight a few more vigorous licks. Her gauze gaped in an enormous yawn. "This rain doesn't help. If it goes on too much longer, it'll wash my fur off." Brambleclaw stopped and let his muzzle rest against Squirrelflight's warm flank. He was just dozing off when he felt her give a little wiggle and hear her say, "I think it's easing off." Lifting his head, Brambleclaw realized that the steady pattering of the rain on the grass outside their shelter had faded away onto uneven, short-lived bursts. The wind had dropped, and the watery beam of sunlight glinted on the drops that hung from every branch and twig. Tawnypelt mewed. "Clouds are breaking up." Brambleclaw scrambled out from the roots and glanced up to see that it was almost sun-high. The rest of the patrol emerged behind him. Mistyfoot scented the air, while Crowfeather groomed the ruffled fur on his gray-black shoulder. "Any chance of hunting?" Squirrelflight meowed. Squirrelfeather. Stretching each hind leg in turn. Sure, Brambleclaw replied. Let's look for something on the way. It'd be a good chance to see how well the woodland could feed hungry cats. The 5 cats spread out among the trees. Brambleclaw kept his ears pricked for the sound of prey, and he paused every few steps to taste the air. At first, all that he could smell were wet leaves and dripping branches, and he felt his spirits sink. Were there so many two-legs here that all the prey had fled? But at least the ground was becoming more uneven, with bushes and clumps of dead bracken where the little creatures might hide. Suddenly, he picked up a tiny scuffling sound among the leaves at the foot of a tree. Squirrelflight heard it at the same moment and streaked towards it. Her paws thudded on the ground, and the prey, a vole, shot out and vanished into a clump of brambles. Squirrelflight raced after it with her nose stretched out. Brambleclaw groaned. She should have known better than to chase something so noisily in the quiet forest. She won't catch it now, Crowfeather commented. They watched Squirrelflight plunge into the bushes. For a heartbeat, her dark ginger fur was visible among the waving branches before it disappeared. A fading yowl came up from the bushes, and then all was still. What happened? Exclaimed Tawny Pelt. Brambleclaw dashed towards the brambles, the vole forgotten. Squirrelflight, he yowled. Squirrelflight, where are you? He pushed his way into the thorny bush branches. Careful, he heard Mistyfoot warn him from behind. Brambleclaw scarcely heard her. Springy twigs slapped him across his face, and he felt a torn stick into his pad. Squirrelflight, he called again. I'm down here! The faint reply came from somewhere below. Brambleclaw looked down and gasped. A tail length in front of him, the ground fell away sharply. Another couple of paw steps and he would have slipped over too. Glancing back over his shoulder, he saw Tawny Pelt pressing up close behind him. Stay back, he warned. There's some sort of cliff here. Let me have a look first. Keeping his belly close to the ground, he crept forward until he could look over the edge. Remembering the gorge in the mountains where Smokepaw had fallen, he braced himself to see Squirrelflight's broken body lying on stones far below. Instead, she was standing in a clump of brambles no more than 3 or 4 lengths beneath him, staring up at him with wide green eyes. Squirrelflight, he gasped, are you all right? No, I'm not, Squirrelflight mewed crossly. I've got so many thorns in me I feel like a hedgehog. And I never caught that wretched vole, but I found something amazing. Come and see. Will we be able to get out again? Squirrelflight sighed. Honestly, Brambleclaw, are you a mouse? Get down here. You've got to see this. Brambleclaw felt his fur prickle with excitement. He glanced back at the other members of the patrol. Tawny Pelt was standing where he had left her, and Mistyfoot and Crowfeather peered anxiously around her flank. Is Squirrelflight hurt? Mistyfoot called. No, I think she's fine, Brambleclaw replied. She wants me to go down there. Will you keep watch? Mistyfoot nodded, and Brambleclaw turned back to the cliff. When he looked at it closely, he saw that it wasn't as sheer as the gorge. It was steep. There were plenty of paw-holds on jutting stones and tussocks of grass. Half slipping, half scrambling, he made his way down until he reached Squirrelflight, who was standing among the brambles looking rather disheveled. There! She spun around, impatiently twitching her tail. See? Brambleclaw followed her gaze more slowly. They were standing on the edge of a bramble thicket. A wide, grassy space stretched in front of them, surrounded by walls of stone. Where he and Squirrelflight had come down, the walls were fairly low, but on the opposite side of the clearing, they stretched above their heads for many fox lengths. It's a good thing you didn't fall on that side, he meowed. Yes, I know, but don't you see, Brambleclaw? Squirrelflight demanded. This is the ThunderClan's new camp. What? Look at it, she insisted. It's perfect. Brambleclaw unhooked a bramble from his fur and patted into the center of the clearing. The stone walls rose all around him, except for a gap not far away, which was choked with dead ferns and grass with whiskery, seedy stems. There were more bramble thickets all around him, and he could see 1 or 2 cracks that might lead to caves in the highest part of the wall. You could see what Squirrelflight meant. This place could make a good camp, but something about it spooked him all the same. I don't know, he began, not wanting to crush Squirrelflight's excitement, but unable to ignore the disquiet that made his paws itch. Look at the surface on the stone, how smooth it's been cut. Only 2 legs could have done that, and we can't camp anywhere near 2 legs. But that must have been ages ago, Squirrelflight argued, coming to join him in the center of the clearing. Look at the grass and bushes growing up the walls. They didn't spring up overnight, did they? There's no scent of 2 legs. Brambleclaw tasted the air. Squirrelflight was right. No 2 legs had been there for a long time. Oh, where'd it go? She was right about the bushes, too. Two Legs must have cut out the stone, maybe to build their nests, and then gone away and left the hollow in the middle of the forest. In a way, it reminded him of the ravine that had sheltered the old ThunderClan camp. Perhaps it would make it feel like home to the clan. He forced himself to be calm. His clanmates needed him to be strong, and not see danger in every shadow and stirring leaf. It might do, I suppose. Squirrelflight flicked her ears. Don't get too enthusiastic, will ya? She mewed. I'm just wondering what it would look like to defend. That part over there would be fine. He gestured with his tail to the highest, steepest wall. But it's pretty low where we came in. And what about that gap? Well, it's an easier way in and out than the one we took just now. We can fill it with thorns or something to keep out uninvited visitors. She bounded over and prowled through the long grass, sniffing here and there. Watching her, Brambleclaw felt a wave of homesickness sweep over him, and he closed his eyes. The feeling seemed to pick him up and swamp him like the waves of the sun-drowned place, and for a few heartbeats he thought he would drown in it. He wanted the old ThunderClan camp with its strong thorn walls and the gorse tunnel that was so easy to defend. He wanted to lie down in the warrior's den underneath the thorn bush, or visit Cinderpelt in her den among the soft green ferns. He wanted to eat fresh kill by the nettle patch while the apprentices scuffled by their favorite tree stump, their fighting moves carefully imitated by the kits outside the nursery. The pain of knowing he could never go back was almost too much for Brambleclaw to bear. The two-leg monsters would have torn up every part of the camp by now, all the places that were so deep in his heart. It wasn't fair. Why had StarClan let this happen? The wind picked up, rattling the branches of the trees that surrounded the hollow and jolting Brambleclaw back to his surroundings. Taking a deep breath, he padded over to Squirrelflight, who was still nosing about in the gap between the walls. You okay? She asked. You're limping. Oh, there's a thorn in my paw. Brambleclaw had almost forgotten about it. Lie down and let me look. When Brambleclaw obeyed, she licked experimentally at his paw and managed to get the end of the thorn between her teeth. With a sharp tug, it came out. There! Squirrelflight meowed. Now give it a good lick. Thanks. You're nearly good enough to be a medicine cat. Squirrelflight gave out a little meow of amusement. Then the laughter died from her eyes and she looked closely at him. You don't like it here, do you? It's not that. Brambleclaw paused in rasping his tongue over his injured pad. It's just, well, I suppose I wanted to find a camp exactly like the one we left behind, in a ravine with gorse to keep out invaders. He trailed off, afraid Squirrelflight would think he was being ridiculous. Instead, she pressed her muzzle affectionately against his. There isn't a cat among ThunderClan that doesn't want to go back to our old home, but it's gone now. StarClan has brought us to a new place, and we've got to find out how to live here. Don't you think this hollow would make a good camp? Two Legs don't come here, and there's no sign of Thunderpaths. Gazing into her shining eyes, Brambleclaw knew that he had brought with him from the forest everything that was truly important. Yeah, right, he murmured, leaning into the warmth of her fur. I couldn't do this without you. You know that, don't you? Squirrelflight's tongue rasped gently over his ear. Stupid furball. Brambleclaw returned the affectionate lick, then froze as he heard the sound of something approaching through the gap. Hi there. It was Crowfeather's voice, muffled by a mouthful of wool. He shouldered the long grass aside as he came up to them and dropped the fresh kill at their paws. You've been so long we started to think a fox might have gotten you. No, we're fine, replied Brambleclaw. If a fox had gotten me, Squirrelflight added, you would have heard it. Don't worry. I dare say we would. Crowfeather meowed, pushing the wool towards them. This is for you, he went on. We've all had ours. We hunted while we were waiting for you to come back. Thanks, Crowfeather, mewed Brambleclaw. The WindClan warrior acknowledged his thanks with a wave of his tail. Well, what do you think of the new ThunderClan camp? Squirrelflight demanded. Here? Crowfeather blinked and turned slowly around while the ThunderClan warrior shared the wool in swift, hungry bites. I suppose it's okay, he mewed at last. If you want to be closed-in like this, it would be easy to defend, but it wouldn't do for WindClan. We're not offering it to WindClan, Squirrelflight pointed out. Crowfeather flicked his ears, and Brambleclaw wondered if he was worried about finding somewhere suitable for his clan. Surely he'd wait until they explored the ridges of the hill before seriously looking for a camp. Now that they'd found this hollow, amid the right sort of woods for voles and squirrels and birds, Brambleclaw was starting to believe there might actually be territories for every clan around the lake. Tawnypelt and Mistyfoot padded into the hollow, tasting the air as they gazed around at the sheer walls of rock. No foxes or badgers, Mistyfoot remarked. Pretty sheltered, too. All the same, you'll need to be careful, Tawnypelt urged Brambleclaw. Two Legs made this place. How do you know they won't come back? Two Legs haven't been here for seasons, Squirrelflight replied calmly. There's no scent of them. There wouldn't be so much undergrowth if they were still cutting about the rock. But Tawnypelt's words made Brambleclaw unsheath his claws and sink them into the rain-damp ground. The memories of two-leg monsters ripping through their old home was too recent. It was all too easy for him to imagine them coming here to cut more stone out of the hollow. And yet ThunderClan would be mousebrained not to use a place that seemed to have nearly everything they would need for a safe and sheltered camp. In the end, it was Firestar who would have to make the decision. Are you ready? Mistyfoot interrupted his thoughts. It's way past sun high. Brambleclaw nodded. He looked around, trying to get his bearings. He wasn't sure what direction they should take to return to the lake, when his nose filled with the unfamiliar smells. Not far away from the entrance to the hollow, he noticed that the ground was sloped upwards. Let's go that way, he suggested. If they gain some height, they might be able to see the lake. The rest of the patrol murmured agreement, and the cats padded side by side out of the hollow. As they pushed through the undergrowth, leaving the sheltered stone walls behind them, Squirrelflight paused and looked over her shoulder. We'll come back, won't we? She spoke so quietly that Brambleclaw wasn't sure if she was talking to him, but he replied anyways. Yes, he said, stretching forward to touch his muzzle to the tip of her ear. I think we will. Come on, called Crowfeather. We want to be back before it gets dark. He didn't add that they still had to find somewhere for WindClan to live, but Brambleclaw knew that that must be in his thoughts. He trotted up to the slope with Squirrelflight beside him, leaving the hollow to be swallowed up once more among the close-growing trees. Wet grass brushed at his fur, chilling him through, but above his head the clouds had cleared away to reveal the pale blue sky of Leaf Bear. The sun shone, though there was little warmth to it. Brambleclaw stopped and looked down at the sweep of leafless branches below. The stone hollow was totally hidden, safe and secret in the surrounding forest. Could it really become ThunderClan's new camp? He had expected to feel more certain when he discovered somewhere his clanmates might be able to live. He had thought it would feel like home. Instead, there was something oppressive about this place, as if the rocks themselves did not want to welcome the newcomers. As they climbed, the trees began to thin out, and the dense undergrowth gave way to stretches of crisp fallen leaves. After a while, Brambleclaw saw glimpses of open moorland between the trunks, and soon they reached the edge of the forest, with the ridges of hills rolling away in front of them. The lake was a gleam of silver in the valley below. Straight ahead, a gray-green swell of moorland grass rippled by the wind. Gorse thickets were dotted over it, and Brambleclaw could hear the sound of running water. There could be no doubt that they had found a home for WindClan. Hey, Crowfeather, he called. What do you think? The WindClan warrior's eyes gleamed, but he did not reply until he had opened his jaws and carefully tasted the air. Rabbits! Right! That's WindClan sorted out, Squirrelflight meowed. Let's get back to the others. Crowfeather shot her a look up from narrowed eyes. Only joking, Squirrelflight mewed quickly. Come on, let's find somewhere for your camp. Brambleclaw knew that they needed to look for a camping place for WindClan, but already the sun was slipping down. The sky, casting long shadows over the grass. Actually, we should get back to the others, he began awkwardly. I'm sorry, Crowfeather. I don't think we've time to explore these hills properly. Telstar can send another patrol tomorrow to check out a site for your camp. I think we should head straight across the ridge to the end of the lake now. Crowfeather's tail tip twitched. For a few heartbeats, he stood motionless, studying the sweep of the hillside before lowering his head to sniff the grass. Brambleclaw was worried that he was about to insist they explored further, but in the end, he just meowed. It's okay. You're right. We should be headed back. There was a guarded look in his eyes as he spoke, and Brambleclaw guessed he wasn't sorry that the cats from the other clans weren't getting a chance to explore WindClan's new territory. Pain stabbed at the young tabby's heart. Crowfeather was ferociously loyal to his clanmates. It wasn't surprising that he would be the first to start setting up the old barriers again. They started to follow the slope up the top of the ridge, with the lake stretching out below them like a shining sheet of sky. Brambleclaw padded beside Squirrelflight, gazing from side to side over this new stretch of territory. They climbed a shoulder of the hill to a stream that foamed over rocks and vanished into trees they had left behind. They followed it uphill for a few fox lengths until they came to stepping stones that they could cross. A smaller stream joined it here, gurgling down a steep, grassy slope. Before they reached the top of the hill, they came to a spot on the ground where the ground fell away, as if some enormous monster had taken a bite out of the hillside. But not a two-leg monster, Brambleclaw realized. This hollow had been formed by time and weather alone. Boulders were scattered over the ground in the middle, while gorse and other shrubs grew thickly around the edges. Inside, it would be sheltered for the wind, but not as close in as the walls of stone that encircled the possible ThunderClan camp. Brambleclaw narrowed his eyes. "What about that for your camp, Crowfeather?" he asked. Crowfeather kneaded the ground in excitement as he looked down the slope. "It looks good," he agreed. "I'll check it out. You go on, and I'll catch up." "Are you sure?" Brambleclaw meowed. "I don't think we should leave you on your own." "I'll be fine," Crowfeather promised, flexing his hind legs, ready to dash off. "There's no scent of two legs or foxes, and I can find my own way back to camp by the horse place. I can smell these creatures from here." Before any of the others could argue, he streaked off down the hill. Brambleclaw watched him pause on the edge of the dip before plunging into the gorse cover, the trembling branches the only sign of where he had been a moment before. "I hope he's right about the two legs and foxes," murmured Mistyfoot, coming over to stand beside Brambleclaw. Too late, he wondered if he could have consulted Mistyfoot before letting Crowfeather go off on his own. He opened his mouth to defend the WindClan warrior, but she stopped him, speaking gently to take any sting out of her words. "It's all right, Brambleclaw. I can see how much respect these cats have for you. It's something to be proud of, not apologize for. Few cats are born leaders, but I think you are." He blinked at her, partially grateful and partially surprised. It seemed strange to have a RiverClan cat make a judgment like that about him. He wondered what Mistyfoot thought of his half-brother, Hawkfrost, who was a RiverClan warrior. Was Tigerstar's other son a born leader too? Suddenly, a gust of wind buffeted them so hard that Brambleclaw's eyes watered, and for a couple of heartbeats he thought it would sweep him off his paws. It brought a strong scent of horse with it. Shaking his head to clear away the tears, Brambleclaw spotted the horse place at the far end of the ridge, and beyond it the smell of copse, where the four clans waited for the patrol to return. "We're almost there!" Squirrelflight exclaimed. She bounded forward, and the other cats followed, their paws flying over the smooth ground. It was much faster to travel here than in the forest, and for a moment, Brambleclaw understood why WindClan cats ran more swiftly than any other. They seemed restless when they were closed in by ferns and tree trunks. The sun was setting behind the pine trees, turning the surface of the lake to fire, and they trekked down the hill. They had just reached the bottom when Crowfeather caught up, panting. "Well?" Squirrelflight demanded. Crowfeather swiped his tongue around his jaws as if he had just swallowed a juicy piece of prey. His eyes gleamed with enthusiasm. "It's great!" he mewed. "There's a tunnel under one of the gorse bushes that looks as if it might lead to an old badger set, but the badgers are long gone. There's not even any scent left." "You could use that set as a den," Tawnypelt suggested. Crowfeather sniffed. "WindClan cats sleep outside. Only badgers and rabbits live in barrows," he reminded her. In twilight, they slipped along the edge of the lake, past the fence of the horse place. All Brambleclaw's senses were alert for dogs and two legs, but they saw nothing except for one huge horse looking over the fence. Squirrelflight jumped as it blew out a noisy breath, then hissed to hide how startled she had been. Moments later, they heard a loud meow coming out from the darkness. "Who's there?" "It's okay, Hawkfrost. It's only us," Mistyfoot called. The RiverClan warrior emerged from the shadows, his powerful shoulders flexing smoothly under his tabby pelt. "Leopardstar and the other leaders sent me out to look for you," he meowed. "They're all expecting you. Follow me." Brambleclaw blinked. It was strange to think that he and Hawkfrost were kin, both sons of Tigerstar. They were alike in so many ways, yet Brambleclaw struggled to feel any kinship or loyalty to the RiverClan warrior. He was too quick to order cats around, too openly hungry for power in his clan, and he made Brambleclaw ask himself questions about their shared inheritance that he would have preferred to ignore, such as, where did Hawkfrost's ambition come from? Did he share Tiger Star's hunger for power at any cost? And if he had inherited that from his father, what did that mean for Brambleclaw? So thank you for the follow, Sammy-senpai! Hawkfrost led them to the trees near the horse place where the clans had stopped to rest the day before. Firestar and Blackstar were talking together beside the tree stump, but otherwise the clearing looked deserted. As soon as the patrol appeared, Blackstar leaped up on the stump and let out a yowl. "Cats of all clans, gather around!" At once, the shadowy shapes of cats began to appear out of hollows and clumps of long grass. One or two jumped down from low-hanging branches. Mudclaw pushed his way through his clanmates and joined Blackstar on the stump, forcing Leopardstar to sit on the ground again. Rude! Firestar padded over to stand in front of Brambleclaw. "Welcome back," he meowed. "No trouble, I hope." "Nothing we couldn't handle," Brambleclaw replied. He glanced guiltily at Squirrelflight as he remembered the fight they had nearly lost against the kitty pets. "One of you had better come up on the stump so we can all hear you," Firestar decided. "Mistyfoot, would you like to join us?" Mistyfoot dipped her head. "Actually, Firestar, I think Brambleclaw should speak on behalf of the patrol. He has more experience than with describing unknown places." Brambleclaw looked quickly at her, but there was no edge to the RiverClan deputy's words. Instead, she stepped back to let him reach the tree stump. "Thanks," he murmured. As he went past, Mistyfoot just blinked. Brambleclaw bunched his hind legs underneath him and sprang to the stump. It was a tight squeeze, and his flank brushed against Blackstar's as he shuffled around to face the cats below. The ShadowClan leader drew away with the faintest hiss, but Brambleclaw tried not to let Blackstar's hostility ruffle his fur. His heart pounded at the thought of describing the long journey around the lake to all 4 clans. The cats gazed up at him, and Brambleclaw could feel their hunger for his news pulsing through the air. Briefly, he wondered if this was what it was like to be a clan leader, with every cat hanging on his words. Then he heard Dustbelt's voice rising impatiently above the rustle of the branches overhead. "Get on with it, Brambleclaw! Tell us what you found!" Brambleclaw swallowed uncomfortably, wondering where to start. He couldn't say that choosing a new home was not all he had hoped for. In spite of Midnight's directions, the dying warrior, the starlight reflected in the lake, he didn't feel as if the clans truly belonged in this territory. It was too easy to imagine 2-legged monsters tearing through the woods, turning the ground to mud and shattering the walls of the stone hollow until the newly built ThunderClan dens were exposed to the sky and every cat was as helpless as a newborn kit. But that wasn't what the clans wanted to hear, and none of the other clans on the patrol had seemed to doubt that this was where they belonged now. They could be right, Brambleclaw told himself firmly. They had proved that the clans could live here. What more could he expect? "It's good news," he began, taking a deep breath. "We have found territories that are suitable for all the clans. Reeds and water for RiverClan, pine forest for ShadowClan, leafy woods for ThunderClan, and moorland for WindClan." A murmur of excitement broke out. Leopardstar called, "What about prey?" "There seems to be plenty," Brambleclaw replied, "given that it's leaf bare. We didn't go hungry, that's for sure." "And 2 legs?" queried another cat. Brambleclaw thought it was ShadowClan warrior, but he couldn't be sure. "We saw some evidence that they visit places around the lake, but there are none there now," he meowed. "Mistyfoot thinks there'll be more of them around in Greenleaf. That's when they used to bring their kits to swim in the river, back in the forest." He noticed several of the cats glance anxiously at each other, and felt the familiar tremor of fear at the thought of what 2-legs had brought to the forest, apart from their kits. He was relieved when Mistyfoot added, "We'll be able to keep out of their way. They won't be a big problem." "Well, that's all." Brambleclaw wasn't sure what else to say. Maybe each of us should tell our own clans what we saw in more detail. "We need to decide where the boundaries will be," Blackstar growled. "Right," meowed Firestar, from where he was sitting at the base of the stump, next to Leopardstar. "We can do that when we have a clearer idea of each territory. Thanks, Brambleclaw." "Hi, Juice." Brambleclaw dipped his head gratefully at his leader. He may have led his friends to the sun-drowned place and back again, and explored the territory around the lake, but he felt as helpless as a kit among the other clan leaders. His fur prickled, and he noticed Hawkfrost staring at him from the edge of the cats seated around the stump. Twitching his ears uncomfortably, Brambleclaw jumped down. He winced as Hawkfrost came over to meet him and braced himself for a hostile comment. Perhaps a challenge about where their new boundaries should be. To his surprise, there was a friendly gleam in the RiverClan warrior's blue eyes.
Thanks for finding the new territories, Brambleclaw, he meowed. I'm almost sorry that we'll be going our separate ways now. I would have liked to hunt with you.
Brambleclaw blinked. Warriors in different clans could not hunt together, but that wasn't the real reason Hawkfrost's suggestion startled him. Did the RiverClan warrior feel something like kinship with him? If he and Hawkfrost had been members of the same clan, might they have been friends like Firestar and Greystripe, who had risked their lives for each other countless times? Well, we'll meet at gatherings, he began. Brambleclaw, what are you doing? Squirrelflight platted up to glare at Hawkfrost. Firestar's waiting for us. Thank you for the raid, Possum! How was your stream? I hope it was wonderful. We're almost done the chapter, so I'm just gonna really quickly finish this chapter, okay? Hi, Katie!
Of course. And Leopardstar will be waiting for me.
Hawkfrost dipped his head in farewell and then patted away. Why were you talking to him? Squirrelflight demanded crossly when Hawkfrost was out of earshot. You know he can't be trusted. I don't know anything of the kind, Brambleclaw retorted. Squirrelflight snorted. Yeah, right. That cat has too much ambition for his own good. Brambleclaw felt his neck furs start to rise. Really? He wishes Mistyfoot had never come back, so that he could be the deputy. I've heard him arguing with her more than once. He wants the best for his clan, that's all, Brambleclaw meowed. There was something in him that understood exactly how Hawkfrost must have felt when Mistyfoot had escaped from the Two Legs and claimed back her place as RiverClan deputy. That's not all. Squirrelflight paused, flicking her tail tip back and forth. I can tell Leafpaw doesn't trust Hawkfrost, and she knows him better than we do. She was in the forest while he was RiverClan deputy. Have you asked her why she feels that way? Squirrelflight shook her head. I don't need to ask her. I just know how she feels. Brambleclaw narrowed his eyes. So you don't have anything against Hawkfrost except for what Leafpaw feels about him. Because she's your sister, right? Well, Hawkfrost is my brother. Are you telling me you feel loyal to him because of that? Squirrelflight exclaimed. But you hardly know him. Neither do you. Do you think you know him well enough to say he can't be trusted? Brambleclaw unsheathed his claws and let them sink into the fallen leaves. Or are you accusing him because of who his father is? Squirrelflight's green eyes stretched wide. If that's what you think, then you don't know me at all, she hissed. She whirled around and stalked away with her tail in the air. Brambleclaw stared after her in dismay. He and Squirrelflight had quarreled ever since she had become an apprentice, but he had never expected to hear such a cold dislike in her voice. Icy claws pricked down Brambleclaw's spine. If Squirrelflight distrusted Hawkfrost because of who his father was, did that mean she didn't trust him? Chapter 5! Yeah! Thank you, guys! Thank you for the raid. So wonderful. That is the end of the... That's where we're gonna end today, I believe. We're gonna end on chapter 5, page 122. Very nice. Thank you again so much for the raid, Possum. I'm sorry you raided us so late into the stream, but I appreciate it nonetheless. We are going to... What are we gonna do? Let's see who's live right now. Maybe there's someone live that we know. I don't know if... Oh, Serin's done still streaming. Night... Ori! Lulu, Kite, Rons. Oh, Corey. Oh my god. All my ex... Not gen mates are streaming. Maybe not Valley, but... Oops. My ex not gen mates. Because they were never my gen mates, but they were gonna be. It's funny because all of them are like, oh, we'll tell you guys one day. But I think I told you guys like literally like 2 weeks after it happened. I can't stop talking. All right, let's raid Ori because we haven't raided Ori in a while, and I like Ori. Ori's my good friend. Okay. Raid message. Oh my god, her model's so cute! Oh my god, I haven't seen it before. What the heck? Is that new? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Is that her model or is it a temporary model? It looks like her. It has like little ears. Oh, it's so cute. Okay, guys, say hi to Ori for me. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Wonderful. Wait, I have to switch screens. Bum bum. Bum bum. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful everything. I hope you guys had fun, or at least relaxed a little bit. I don't know if we're gonna have a stream tomorrow, but probably, I have no idea actually. I don't know. We'll see. Stream on Friday though. We're gonna stream with Dan. We're gonna play Suburb, which is Homestuck, as you know. I love you guys. Make sure you take care of yourself. Brush your teeth. Wash your face. Put on sunscreen. All the good stuff. Remember, moderation is the key to true happiness.